Hey, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome.
Sorry
Tonight,
about sorry. We had a bit of confusion about the time of the show, unfortunately. But it is 8 p.m. because obviously we're here now. But yeah, for some reason the Facebook thing said 7 p.m. But then when you click through, it said 8 p.m. Technology.
yeah, I blame my holiday.
I blame your holiday as well.
Cool. So tonight we're gonna have a Joy. We're gonna introduce him properly after we play the video. So as you guys know, probably who he is, we're gonna play the promo for School of Motion. Is a really nice video. So let me just share the screen and then we introduce him properly to everyone. Give me 1 second. Make sure we got sound. Cool. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Cool. So let me just
gorgeous.
When's the last time something moved you? Was it a flash of beauty? A twist of phrase? A bit of brilliance that blew your mind? What if you could move people like that? And what if you could do it with shapes, sounds, design, and movement? When it comes to motion design, we believe everyone deserves the chance to move from novice to superstar. So we've created an online place for that to happen, so no matter where you are, we're there too. We're opening up worlds of possibilities for our students, and we're kind of obsessed with doing it well. Our teachers aren't just skilled working professionals. They're also the top motion design experts in the industry. Our critiques aren't vague and generic. They're valuable insights about your work. Our classes aren't easy. They are intense and effective, a tidal wave of knowledge. And our students aren't faceless usernames watching talking head instructors. We're a tight-knit community of highly driven learners, filled with global collaboration, inspiration, opportunities, and plenty of fun characters. At School of Motion, we take a full art education, strip it down to the essentials, and supercharge it with real-world grit. And we're equipping our students to do amazing things for some of the best brands and studios out there. In fact, this thing you're watching right now, and even this, was made by School of Motion alumni. Now it's your turn to create something truly moving, and we're ready to help you do it. Because the things that move you forward move us too. School of Motion. We're not just a school, we're a movement.
Nice. I really love the video, man.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's just such a really nice range of styles, and ways some of the bits go from 2D to 3D and back again. It's just really well done.
Yeah, well, thank you both. I mean, I single-handedly designed and animated that entire thing. No.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought.
So Ordinary Folk gets all the credit. Basically, like, the credit that I can take for that is I picked the right studio to make that video.
Curation is key, man.
Yeah, and I had enough dirt on Jorge to where I could convince him to do it for the budget we had. That was amazing. But actually, my favorite part of that was, well, aside from getting to like finally unleash Jorge and just say, hey, do your thing, and not, like, that was kind of the cool thing, I think. And the reason that they did it was because we basically let them do whatever they want. And there was very little sort of like pushback at any point. But one thing that we asked them to do, and they agreed to do it, was to actually use our alumni as freelance animators on it. And so there's a bunch of shots in there where some of our students actually worked on it. And then at the end, there's this one section where you see their face and their name and what classes they've taken and stuff. So I still get goosebumps when I watch that, because it's kind of like a bucket list thing. It's all basically downhill from here, is what I'm saying.
It's nice that like paying it back to the students as well. Like, this is a real live job that lots of people will see, and it's going to obviously promote the school. So don't mess it up.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yes, I'll drink to that.
Yeah.
Yep. So what do you guys? Yeah, you go, Chag.
Yeah, no, just introduce properly, Joey. So as probably everyone knows, Joey is the founder of School of Motion. We just played the video. We're gonna talk a little bit more in depth about school and things like that. But let's just see what each one is drinking before anything. So what are you drinking, Joe?
So I'm drinking an old fashioned, which my wife and I got into, I don't know, last year. One of our friends made us one. And if you don't know what it is, it's bourbon, It's simple syrup, which is basically sugar and water mixed together. It's bitters, which is like, I don't even know what it is. It's kind of this sour, like orangey flavored thing. And then I like to throw a little maraschino cherry in there, just kick it up a little bit. The problem is they're really sweet and they go down really easy. So I can only drink one on this live stream. Otherwise I might
there is a point in like every person's life where you just go, oh, now an old fashioned makes sense.
Yeah. I'm turning 40 in April. So I feel like this is the time to really just embrace that,
Yeah.
I think it's like coffee. You get to a certain maturity and then go, oh, it kind of clicks.
Yeah, I'm still trying to force myself to drink coffee. But I'm not really into whiskey as well.
Have you tried Vietnamese coffee? That's like the gateway coffee, where it's like just super, super sugary and full of
just
condensed milk.
Yeah. That's,
See, that appeals to the Brazilian side, condensed milk.
Yeah, we love condensed milk.
Just put a little coffee in the milk and you're good.
You just put a little coffee in the milk, that's good.
Well, so I don't know how it is, in Europe, but here, and I live in Florida. So Florida, that's where Disney World is. It's sort of like the land of the strip mall, and it's consumerism kind of everywhere. And so around this time in the United States, but especially in Florida and up in New England, everything is pumpkin flavored now. And so there's this big chain here called Dunkin' Donuts. I don't know if they have it overseas, but it's huge here. And they do a pumpkin coffee every year, and I'm addicted to it. It's like, it's disgusting. It really is just like, it's like a cake that they blended. It's like they took a piece of pumpkin pie and blended it and added caffeine. That's what it tastes like. And I used to drink one like probably every other day.
I guess the kind of the work from home COVID thing is probably doing your health a lot of good right now.
In some ways, yes, except the problem is this.
It's the drink,
pros and cons.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, definitely. I'm exercising more. I'm getting more sleep, but sometimes the stress of the COVID, it makes the old fashioned taste better. So I guess
there you go.
Cheers, guys.
Good. What are you drinking, James?
I'm drinking a oak aged vintage ale called Crafty Hen. Well, I got a full one there. It's almost done.
This is the tester.
That's good. Yeah, you probably have quite a few at the table. I'm just
that's right.
A little glass of porter today as well.
Nice, very nice.
Fancy. All right.
Just going easy.
You're so sophisticated.
Nah, I just came back from holiday and I just drank every single day quite a lot. So just try and get easy today.
Trying to dry out. Yeah. Well, it's 3 p.m. here on a Tuesday. So I feel like I am really kind of going the extra mile for you too.
We appreciate that.
Yeah. I'm a people pleaser.
So. Cool. So let's just start talking quickly. We didn't get anyone that is involved in the education system, so it'd be nice to just get your point of view with all the COVID, how it works. Before anything, if you can just explain to us what is School of Motion, so people don't really know, just so people can understand it's an online course and everything, and that if you can explain to us how that affects you guys with the COVID situation.
Sure. So School Motion is an online school, and we teach motion design. So we teach sort of basic graphic design, basic software skills, basic animation skills, and we're starting to build out a 3D curriculum. So we've actually got a pretty full featured curriculum at this point, and we're starting to plug little holes and sort of expand what we teach. But we do it all online. So all of our students take every single part of our class just over the internet. And there's a lot of cool things about that. One is that it's enabled us to sort of flip the business model on its head that you used to have, where you would have, really great artists. And if those great artists want to make a great living, the best way to do that is to go out into the industry and make work. And if but then, it's pretty common, like towards the end of your career, around midlife, you maybe burn out a little bit, and everybody for at least a minute thinks, oh, maybe I'll teach. And it used to be that if you go teach, like, let's say that you just take a teaching job at like a local college or something like that, you're going to probably cut your salary in half. And I had this experience actually, because I was running a studio in Boston, and I was the creative director and one of the co-founders. And I sort of got burnt out, and I moved to Florida, and I started teaching at an art school. And my take home pay, like my salary plus the bonuses and everything, I basically cut my salary by 2/3
Wow.
by deciding to teach. And what's interesting, and the reason for that is just the business model of those schools. And with online teaching, though, you can operate at a much bigger scale. And the way we've used technology, we've been able to like scale up and have, I think we have 1,700 students this session, like this quarter going through. But all of them have interactivity with an actual professional artist, critiquing their work, giving them feedback. There's other students that they're interacting with every single day. There's lots and lots of content, and the teacher might be Sonder Van Dyke. You know, it might be Sarah Beth Morgan. You know, you could be learning expressions from Zach Lovett. So we're able to, because of the business model, get teachers that are still in the industry at the highest levels, you know, basically teaching. I mean, you know, Noel Honig, who teaches our Intro to After Effects class, is routinely freelancing for Golden Wolf, right? So it's like that caliber of person, which you can still get that at some art schools, but it's way more rare. So anyway, so that's kind of what School of Motion is. We have this interactive layer on top of like our traditional kind of video classes, and that's kind of our secret sauce. And there's a community built around it. I'm looking in the YouTube comments, and I can see some of our alumni there. How have we been affected by COVID? I mean, I think in a lot of ways we were lucky. So we've been a remote company since day one. We've never had an office, right? Like a central office. So in terms of how we all work and do what we need to do, nothing changed. And in fact, it almost got easier because like all of a sudden everyone was doing it, and it just became normalized, and the tools got better, and some companies were like letting tools be free for a few months and things like that.
Like a captive audience as well in some ways.
Yeah, and so that's
like
the
where you gonna go?
part. That's the interesting part, is that, you know, so the timing of COVID hitting the US coincided perfectly with our spring registration period, when we were registering for spring classes.
Okay.
And literally, like, our classes went on sale, I think the day the lockdowns were announced in the US. It was like early March.
I think there's a conspiracy theory coming here.
Yeah. So yeah, and there was a lot of PayPal charges from Fauci. No, so anyway, so our sales were initially impacted pretty severely, like to a worrying level. And the way I kind of look at it is like, we've had this model for years now where our classes are not on sale all year. You can only buy them during the registration period. And so that creates this big spike usually at the beginning, and then sort of a steady stream of registrations up until the last week, and then it spikes again. And it's pretty predictable. It's actually been like interesting to see how consistent that is. COVID just totally derailed that. And so we were really I was kind of nervous. This was the first time in a while. I was like, oh my gosh, this is really going to impact us. And there was about a week where the sales just like flatlined. And then they started to pick back up, and then they really picked back up. And then in the summer, we had our biggest registration ever.
Wow,
it's amazing.
By a lot. And then this one that just ended was, I think we actually had less students, slightly less students, but in terms of revenue, I think this might actually be our highest revenue quarter ever. So, so that is to say that we are one of those weird businesses where, you know, almost like Amazon, you know, or Zoom, or probably Netflix, like probably all of the
Animation
things that you get
Bezos.
over the internet. Yeah, like, I mean, I've actually talked to a lot of, and I'm sure you two have experienced this, like studio owners that had the exact same experience as us. March was terrifying, and you know, like in the United States, there was a lot of government intervention. There was PPP loans, which is these paycheck protection loans.
We had similar here.
Yeah, so you know, everyone's wrangling with that and like trying to keep their team from like, you know, losing their minds and being overstressed, and you know, talking to studio owners trying to figure out how to do it remotely, you know, and then it came back kind of with a vengeance in the summer.
Second wave.
Yeah. Too soon. So I guess that's been our experience. I mean, we've you know, I think business wise, we're fortunate that it hasn't really impacted it I mean, who knows where we'd be without COVID? We might be a little higher, we might be a little lower. I think for me and for our team, it's really just been the extra mental overhead of having to, in the back of your mind, think about this giant thing while doing your work and having students and, you know, answering customer support tickets and stuff like that.
So how have you coped with like the extra influx? Has it kind of like, has it put any stress on the current infrastructure? Has it forced the infrastructure to kind of like evolve more, or is it already set up in such a way that it's quite easy to take a large influx like this?
That's a great question. So as far as the technology side, you know, we were already sort of beefing up our team in terms of adding more development resources and hiring new teaching assistants. So the way that our classes work is you get a lesson, you get a homework assignment, and then if you have any questions, you can ask other students, but you also have a dedicated teaching assistant that's, you know, yours, and you have the same one the whole time. And that teaching assistant, you know, we have a critique tool built into our website, so that they're literally drawing over frames and giving you notes and things like that, and answering questions. And so that's the hardest thing to scale up when we get more students, is we need to find and train more teaching assistants.
More teachers.
Yeah, and teaching assistants are typically artists already in the industry. Sometimes they've taken the class and they were like one of the top students, and so they know the material really well. Or in the case of, we have a new class that just came out that's like an intermediate Cinema 4D class. And so for that, we had to go out and find Cinema 4D artists that are pretty high level to be able to handle like critiquing and helping students with Redshift and stuff like that. And so to help scale
That's
that,
quite hard in itself.
Yeah, so it's tricky, but we've actually, we brought on pretty recently Frank Suarez, who is now our head of the teaching assistant program. And so we have a full-time person that's basically trying to make sure that teaching assistants are supported and trained and they have the resources they need. And at the same time, we're always trying to make our site better and easier for them to use, and try to like automate things that can be automated, reminding people, hey, you have a critique to do, things like that. So it's kind of like this juggling thing where it's like you have to add more people, but you have to make the process of adding more people easier at the same time you're adding more people. And it's like building a machine while the machine is flying through the air. You know? That's kind of how it feels.
Yeah, I always feel, because I used to teach as well. I got Escape Studios here in London. I create the motion graphic course at Escape Studio, and I teach for, I think, about 4 or 5 years before, but I used to do the night course, so it used to be twice a week, and the school really want to push for full time, and running the studio I couldn't do the full time, and for me it was really hard to find people really want to shift the career. It's like you say in the beginning, because the education doesn't pay us the same as a freelance, and I needed someone who could carry on the full-time course I built in the daytime, and it needs to be someone really good as well, so could carry on the course, and was really tricky to find. How do you guys find people? You know, is being really hard to find, like even assistants?
I just wrote down that same bloody question, damn it.
Yeah, so the secret. Okay. so here's the way here's the way I look at it. So I kind of try to like deconstruct teaching, right? So when we say teacher, we have this construct that appears in our brain of what teacher means, right? And typically, you know, at least in the States, and maybe I'm sure it's almost identical where you guys live, but like you have this person, they have knowledge in their head, and they are also charismatic presenters. Like that's what a good teacher typically means. It's someone who's entertaining, who can make the material relatable and isn't shy in front of crowds, things like that. They have a knack for teaching too. Like they sort of have that kind of brain where they can kind of revert back to a beginner for a second so that they can remember, oh, I used to not know what keyframe meant, so I need to make sure I define keyframe right now.
It's quite a skill to simplify things, but without being condescending as well. I think it's,
and so you have all of these things. You have this Venn diagram of different skills, and then if you're talking about online teaching, you have all of those. Plus, can you light a camera shot decently well? Can you record your screen and make that interesting? All of that stuff. And if you're teaching design or animation, are you a good designer? Are you a good animator? So what you're making in the end isn't, you know, garbage.
Yeah.
You have all of these pieces that have to be, you know,
Connected.
together to make that good, right? And in the real world, you have to have all of that in one person, and it's like finding a unicorn.
Yeah, it's really
right?
difficult.
That's the problem, and it's a challenge, and that's why there's this guy I follow on Twitter. His name's Scott Galloway, and he teaches at NYU, and he has a theory that in the future, people who teach in person who have all of those skills are going to be paid $1 million a year because they're so rare. And but they're gonna like, but you're gonna have to pay extra to be in the room with them, and everybody else can watch them online. But anyway, I'm kind of digressing here. So online, though, if you're teaching online, you can break those pieces apart, right? So there are people out there who are these unicorns who can just teach. I mean, I think Andrew Kramer is kind of like, you know, he's the top of the mountain. He is a great artist. He's a great presenter. He's charismatic. He knows how to make production value and all of that stuff, all in one person, all by himself. Most people don't do that. And so what we do is we try to find teachers that have 2 or 3 of those things, and then we provide the rest.
Okay.
So, right. And so, I'll use, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Like I would use probably, I think Sarah Beth Morgan's a great example. So she came in and she's an amazing artist and has a ton of knowledge in there. Right. But she never really taught before. And so just in terms of like, how do I structure a lesson? What are things that, you know, are just intuitive to her that like a beginner's not going to know? Like even I remember talking to her about, you know, drawing, because that's what she's known for. And beginners often try to draw with their wrist, and pros draw like with their whole arm. That's not a thing she thinks of anymore. She just does it. But someone who thinks like a teacher and is always examining things, like me or our staff.
I'm just thinking if I draw with my wrist or my arm.
Yeah,
where am I on the
try
spectrum?
it. Like, you know, like if you, I guess it probably depends on like what the surface is, but like if you try to draw a circle like this versus just using your arm, it's easier, right? So anyway, so there's little things like that we can help pick out with an instructor. So we basically extract all the knowledge out of their brain. We have this very intense process. We call it outlining, but it's really like torturing our instructors for a month or 2. And extracting everything they know. And then we assemble it back together into like a curriculum for that class. And then we have gear kits, we have iMac Pros we ship out, microphones and whatever they need. So we handle all of the production value, we do all the editing, you know, we provide critique on their lessons. So what we try to do is make it so that our instructor can focus on the 2 or 3 things they're amazing at and use us for everything else. And when you do that, the net effect is, oh my gosh, look at this perfect unicorn of a teacher, but you don't have to have all of those characteristics in one person so you can scale it. And it's the same thing. So
it's all a facade.
Basically, yeah, it's all fake. None of us actually know what we're doing. I don't even like After Effects. No, just kidding. So if you go to
open After Effects?
Yeah, I have.
What the hell's an After Effect?
Exactly. But if you go to masterclass, right, and you watch, you know, a class, I think there's one with Serena Williams teaching tennis, right? And she is like the best female tennis player in the history of the world. But does she know how to structure a tennis lesson as well as, you know, like an actual tennis instructor from IMG Academy or something who's been doing it their whole life? Does she know how to, you know, what lens you should shoot, you know, like the serving lesson with? She doesn't need
I kind of like the idea of her doing lessons, but just going, you'll never be this good.
I mean,
that's it.
It's true. I mean, she would not be lying if she just said that. But
yeah, because I think for me, just remembering, you know, when I used to teach, I remember in the beginning, it used to be even like running the studio, having the interns and just sharing experience with them. Because we're so far ahead, we end up forgetting the basic stuff. So sometimes we explain, you know, even like James used to do as well. I used to do a lot of tutorials for computer arts. And when I used to write, it used to be a lot more difficult because you need to have certain amount of text you can add on there, but you need explaining a simple way, but needs to be, you know, so we couldn't write too much for the tutorial. Nowadays with video tutorial is a lot easier, but I used to remember it used to be a nightmare, you know, because you need to explain.
It's kind of a good thing, right?
it was good because I think he used to train us
Forced you.
how,
Yeah.
force us, you know. And when I went live to teach, I used to remember, you know, I need to go back quite a lot. It's not just explain, I just play easy here and change the curve.
I just missed out bits so they couldn't do the tutorial.
So it is really hard. It's really hard, and people, I think, sometimes don't realize how difficult it is to teach. You know, I think
It is, yeah.
It's
Yeah. I remember like when so I started School of Motion. It was just sort of like my personal blog, I guess, for a
that
year
was
and a half,
my
maybe 2.
question.
Yeah. So I started it while I was at Toil, which was the studio in Boston.
Yeah.
And I did it. It's kind of a long story, but basically I did it because I was feeling burnt out. I was feeling like, you know, I'd kind of hit the ceiling. I wrote this long article about it on Motionographer. You can like find it.
Yeah, I read that before.
But you know, I basically felt like, okay, I'd sort of gotten to the top of this mountain and no longer wanted to be there. And so I started this website thinking maybe this is an escape hatch for me. And so I started teaching. That was the first teaching I'd ever done like formally in front of like a camera and trying to actually explain things to people that I didn't know what context they had or any of that. And I did that like, I don't know, I think I had a dozen tutorials by the time I got hired to teach in person at Ringling. And so when I got there, I had such imposter syndrome. I thought, I have no business being here. This is insane. And like my you know, my colleagues there, some of them are still there. So like Morgan Williams, who now teaches also at School of Motion, you know, he worked on Cloudy with the Chance of Meatballs, the first movie. You know,
I love that book. Well,
character
and the film.
animator
So
on the end title sequence. He, you know, hand-drawn animator, old school. Ron Zeitler was there when I was there, and he was an animator, I think, on Lilo and Stitch, like a bunch of the old Disney movies. I mean, the faculty there are just incredible. And I was like, what the hell am I doing here? And so I remember the first day of class, and I think the first class I taught was like an intro to After Effects class. And I over prepared like crazy for that class. Like I probably practiced for the week leading up to it, like, here's what I'm going to say. And these are 3-hour classes. So the idea was like you lecture for an hour and a half, and then you kind of work with the students for an hour and a half. And I over prepared like crazy. And sort of as the semester went on, I started to realize like, okay, I like doing this. This is really fun for me. But also there's a trick to it. And the trick to it is not to teach too much. That's actually mostly my problem when I do tutorials and when I set up classes. And actually it's like kind of trickled into School of Motion. Or some of our classes are pretty dense in terms of what we try to teach in it. And so I think that like, you know, it's funny, James, talking about those article-based tutorials. There's something to that actually, where you can, especially like if you're targeting really experienced artists, they don't necessarily want to sit there for 10 minutes and hear me go, hey guys, Joey here from School of Motion. Make sure you smash that like button, you know, before I finally walk them through whatever. They probably would appreciate that article, but it's so much harder to write that article than to make a 10-minute YouTube video, you know?
Actually, just thinking like what you're saying about teaching too much. Like one of the things I found with tutorials, and I'm sure it happens on a lot of tutorial websites too, is people would do the tutorial and then basically just copy it, and that would be it. So how do you guys at School of Motion go about getting people to, you know, just apply what they've learned to their own projects? Because I find that's quite a difficult thing that's happened over the course of the last 10 years or so, where you've had way more tutorials online. Like there was one case,
tutorials as well, no?
Yeah, well, there's one case about 10 years ago. Someone basically just rendered out the files from a tutorial I wrote for a magazine, and they sent me their showreel with what they had rendered that I'd friggin' made on the showreel. I'm like, face palm. Yeah, but like, you know, as Thiago knows, we're in the studio. When you look at a lot of people's showreels, you know, oh, I know where that tutorial came from, and that one, and that one, and that one. So how do you get people to? How do you promote? I guess like cognitive thinking, really, based on what they've learned.
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's funny because it's one of these problems. It's definitely a problem, but it's a problem that I never sort of anticipated when we started running classes, because it's just one of those things, like I never imagined like, oh, one day 10,000 people will have taken this. And so like, what happens if they all have the same homework assignment? So my philosophy on it used to be, it doesn't matter, right? Because so I'm talking specifically about our classes. When you do a School of Motion class, you're given an exercise to do once or twice a week, depending on which week it is. And those exercises are always designed in a way where even if we're giving you a Photoshop file and saying, here's the storyboards for this, just animate it. That's all your job is right now, is to animate, and only animate from frame A to frame B in some clever way. We design it so that there's room for, like creativity to come into play, right? And so I used to think, okay, it's fine if, there's show reels out there and people applying for jobs. And I guess a good example would be Animation Bootcamp, which is probably one of our most popular classes. It's just an animation training class for After Effects artists. And there's a final project from that class based on a script I wrote 5 years ago, and I did the storyboards. And I basically give the students this set of storyboards for this visual essay. And so now at this point, thousands of people have done this. And I mean, if you search, so the name of the piece is Be the Ice Sculptor, because it's a metaphor about don't be the person that fixes the chainsaw and knows how a chainsaw works. Be the person that makes ice sculptures with it. It's a metaphor. It's very deep.
Deep, man,
but anyway, so if you search for that on Vimeo or YouTube, you'll find hundreds of them. And some of them are amazing. And sometimes people completely redesign all the artwork. But for the most part, all of them look the same. They just move completely differently because it's an animation class. And I didn't want them to worry about designing. I just wanted them to worry about animating. So this has become a problem, I think, only at the very tip top of motion design. So if you apply for a job at a studio, at Buck or Gunner or Giant Ant or State or something like that, chances are they've seen a lot of that assignment on Reels at this point, right?
Yep.
And
they probably hate you for it.
Yeah, we've gotten criticized for it, and so but the thing is, it's a student project, right? And so I think, in my mind anyway, the problem is not that it's bad to have that on your reel. It's just that if that's on your reel, that's kind of a sign that you haven't done enough work to apply for whatever you're applying for, if it bothers that person, right? And some people there's no pleasing some people, but if your reel is 75% School of Motion homework assignments, and you apply for a job as a motion designer at Boeing, right? That HR person will not recognize any of the work, won't even know if it's well designed or animated, but will be able to tell that you can do motion design and will hire you. And for that level, that stage of someone's career, that's perfect, right?
I mean, it's good that it shows like you're saying, it shows like a level of competence, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah.
But it'd be interesting to see to see what happens in terms of like if they hire them for their creativity as well, thinking that's their creative, and that's where it becomes a little bit muddy.
Yeah, right? I think for me the main problem, especially looking a lot of show reels in the studio, is people is not clear what they did on the show reel. I don't have a problem if someone does a show reel with what they learn on the course, but be clear up front, say this, I did the animation, this was the exercise. Because when at least you stop and you focus, you look at only the animation. The problem is most of the people, they just don't break down the show reel. So when you look and you say, ooh, I really love this design piece. And
because everyone's a director.
Yeah, and also the problem, like with, not the problem, but like with you guys, because it's a private course. It's not online tutorial open to anyone. So because we, even no matter how high we are, we're still looking for tutorials. There is things we don't want to feel.
Every day is a school day.
Yeah, it is, and where is the tutorials when you want. You just don't want to remember because you don't do that every day. But as soon as you see that tutorial and someone show you, straight away. If the person was up front and say, this is a tutorial I did for learning, and I just did the animation here, that's a bit different. But I think you guys do more exercise than just a tutorial,
Yeah, for the classes, for the classes, the way they're structured is there'll be a lesson, and like maybe a good example would be like for a design class, right? So we also have a new design class that just came out called Design Kickstart. And it's basically design 101 for motion designers. And so in the first sort of exercise, you're learning about positive and negative space. And so you're watching Mike Frederick, who is this like brilliant designer, and he's designing this really simple black and white, just using basic shapes and some type and stuff, and making like, you know, really big shapes so that it kind of blocks out most of the frame and makes it white. And then it feels like there's this, you know, sort of figure ground thing. And then it reverses on the next frame, and it's teaching you about that, right? And then we tell the students, now do the exact same thing, except your type is different and your images are different. Make whatever you want, right? And just show that you understand this. And so that's how we try to set things up, so that you're never doing exactly what the instructor did.
That's really good.
Ever. I'm trying to think. There might be some times where, you know, like I think there's really only one or two exercises probably across all of our classes where you're literally doing exactly what the instructor did. And a lot of times those are things that are very, very technical. But even like our visual effects class, which is really like a compositing for motion designers class, there's a rotoscoping lesson in there, and it's the best rotoscoping lesson you've ever seen. It took, I think, 4 weeks to make this one lesson. It was insane. And it gets into everything, mocha and doing fingers. And then the students are given their own clip. They have to roto. And so even though they're doing exactly what the instructor just did, it's on a different clip. And so now, of course, it's totally different. So we always try to structure it that way. Now, tutorials are different. Because with a tutorial, we're not leaving this challenge to be, you know, to be done. And sometimes we'll sort of say that in the tutorial, hey, you know, why don't you try this and post it and hashtag this and we'll look at it. But most people don't watch tutorials and then immediately go and use them. They don't treat it like a class, right?
No.
It's more like a technique than you know, learning how to animate or anything like that. No?
Well, yeah, and I think honestly, and this could just be confirmation bias too, but I think that's one of the reasons when we started running classes, and our classes are not inexpensive. I mean, you get a lot for them, but they are expensive. And one of the reasons they're expensive is because I always believe this, that if you're consuming something for free, you're going to value it as a free thing, right?
Yeah, it devalues, doesn't it?
It devalues it. And so if you're going to have a free thing, right? So already it's not worth as much to you. And so you're probably less likely to trade a bunch of time and a bunch of energy for that free thing. So would you rather watch a Video Copilot tutorial where you're going to learn to make like the sickest, you know, ball of electricity, 100% built-in plugins with like interactive glows and depth of field? Or would you rather learn about Gestalt theory? Right.
Well, I mean,
you know, so
Andrew Kramer's got quite a dreamy voice. So
he does. He's got that dimple too. Come on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let me see if I can.
Almost there. Oh, I noticed your grayscale gorilla hoodie as well.
This is my favorite hoodie. It's actually embarrassing how often I wear this. And like one year at NAB, the Grayscale Gorilla guys had a bunch of these they were giving out. And I mean, I've worn it to death. I mean, it's actually kind of falling apart. But yeah, School Motion doesn't have hoodies, unfortunately. Yet. Yes, but we will.
We give
you can do face masks. Face masks are good right now.
There we go. That triangle shaped like our logo.
Yeah.
Maybe we could.
Yeah, there you go. It fits right in.
Yeah, they wouldn't be very effective at blocking, you know, the virus, but they would be well branded.
It would look cool. Yeah. One quick question that always is something, I'm not gonna say that bothered me, but is a doubt I have, and I want to understand your point.
Yeah.
Because, you know, I hear a lot about online school, and I think nowadays is a lot. You know, I started my career about 21 years ago, so we didn't have even.
Damn, son.
Yeah, it's getting old.
AOL.
But, you know, we didn't have like internet or even tutorials to look. You know, you need to do a course and everything. I'm a person I really like go out and meet people. I like the physical. I like that being in the studio and share information with.
Too physical sometimes.
Too physical sometimes, you know. But it's with the online school, for me, what is nice about is because, you know, when you go traditional university, you spend 4 years and you leave the university. To be honest, I helped quite a few universities here in London, you know, like reviewing students. And some of them, you know, after 4 years doing motion graphic, they don't even know what is the principle of animation, you know, anything like that. So this is after 4 years. With you guys, you know, online schools, you can go direct what you want to learn, what you need to learn. But for me, is where do you think we're going? Because I quite miss that, to see the other students. I miss, you know, to be in connection with everyone and chat and the social thing. And do you think that is a problem for you guys, or do you see, because I think even some schools discuss to having like a kind of a place where they can go and they can meet, like a campus, but it's still online school.
You have like a common room in the UK at universities. It's called a common room, where everyone just gets together and in between lessons.
Yeah.
How that affect you guys?
Yeah.
And,
so this is like one of my favorite things to talk about, Tiago. So so first of all, you're exactly right. That is the big, like, you know, there's this business concept of a moat. Like, so the moat for a place like SCAD or Ringling, or, you know, even like Hyper Island, the moat they have is that you are in a room, in a building, living in the same city as these other creative people that are on the same learning journey as you, and all of that, right? And online, you know, like, it's actually pretty crazy how close our online community is. And there are School of Motion alumni meetups in countries all over the globe, in cities I've never been to. And there'll be a dozen School of Motion alumni meeting up at a bar and sending a picture from Warsaw, Poland or something. It's amazing. But I'm under no illusions that that's the same thing as staying up all night working on your senior project in the computer lab. I know it's not the same thing. And so I think that it's actually kind of a false premise, though. I don't think you have to replace that. And I think that that's actually the problem that most people have when they try to teach online, or they try to make an online school, is they try to perfectly recreate the classroom experience. They're two completely different things. Yeah, completely different things. And so I think that in my utopian vision of the future, which we'll see if it ever comes past, there will be a spectrum of learning experiences that you can choose from, appropriate to your physical location, let's be honest, your financial situation, what you want to learn, all of those things, right? Like, if you live in Los Angeles and your family has money and you want to go study at Art Center or go to Otis, and it's not a big deal to pay, and I know it's totally different in Europe, by the way, but those schools right now are almost $80,000 a year.
I'm sure there was a scandal recently with, you know, an easy in if you pay certain actors or actresses.
Oh yeah. Well, so yeah. Well, that was like a celebrity made it look like her daughter was on the crew team, so she could get a crew scholarship.
That was it. Yeah.
Her grades weren't good enough to get into USC.
But will School of Motion be doing anything like that?
Well, listen, I'm gonna leave my Bitcoin address at the end of this, and if you.
Nice.
But anyway, so where was I going? So there's always gonna be a place for that, right? There's a lot of wealth out there, and some people want the Cadillac of learning, and for some people, I think for some percentage of students, it's gonna be worth it, even if they have to take out loans for $250,000 to learn motion design.
Wow.
For some percentage, it will still be worth it, because the experience will be amazing. It will kind of accelerate their learning, and they'll have a network at the end of it and all those things.
Yeah, I think a lot of the investment is probably in, like you say, like network at the end. You know, yeah. Because if you've got lots of people with various amounts of money,
that's the promise.
You get the connections through that, don't you? Really.
That's the promise.
I also used to like hundreds of thousands of dollars going to a red brick or whatever.
Good question.
do you see something? I don't know. I'm just trying idea here. I don't know. You pray for quite a lot. Do you see like School of Motion maybe, having a room like we have a WeWork in London where you rent, like just the desk. Maybe you guys rent one room each, different country where students can go and have the course online. Everything's still online, but you have a room where they can meet and be part
an
of
internet cafe.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about it. The problem is, so are you guys familiar with MoGraph Mentor?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my friend Mike runs MoGraph Mentor, and for I think about a year, he experimented with that model basically. And the model was, I'm going to have a building with computers in it, and camera equipment and licenses of everything, and access to all of this online material, right? So we're not going to hire teachers to come in and teach, but we're going to have all of the stuff you would need to learn this online, but we're also going to have a giant, beautiful building with a good coffee machine. And so if you're a student, you pay it. So I think his model was to almost make it like a gym, like you pay a membership every month and you get to go to this place and learn whatever you want. And there's always someone there to help you, but there's other students. And so you kind of get some of what you're talking about. You get that social thing.
Yeah.
The problem is, in the United States, there's a bunch of dominoes that have to tip over before that starts making sense. And actually, I think like part of it is just let's say that School Motion did that, right? That's a very different business model than we currently have. And it would be very expensive to even try that, right? But let's say we tried that. Let's say we did that in Chicago or something like that, or LA, like some big market, New York. And we spent all that money. And in order to make that make sense, we would have to charge people $500 a month or $1,000 a month. Still far less than going to Tisch or something like that, right? Unless we're accredited, you can't take out a loan to take a School Motion class, right? Not as easily. Whereas it's easy to get $80,000 a year to go to Otis or RISD or something like that. And that's something that I know Mike ran into that I never really predicted. So I think the idea of it's amazing. And Chris Do has talked about trying something like that. So I think at some point that model will work. I just think there's a lot of barriers right now. Here's another model that's really interesting, by the way. I just got to meet the founder of this amazing school. It's called Lambda School. And Lambda School is for software developers. And their model is this, it's crazy. So it's an 18-month program and it's 40 hours a week. It's a full-time program. It's all remote, all online. They have teachers and it's all live. They don't do video. I think they will end up doing it at some point. But right now it's all live, 18-month program, and it costs, I think, $30,000. Now that's not cheap, but here's how they do it. You don't actually pay for it. You take the whole thing for free. Then they try to get you a job. And if they get you a job as a software developer at Facebook, you're going to start at $120,000 a year, and you sign an income share agreement with them. If you get hired after you take this, we get 17% of your salary until you've paid back 30 grand and then you're done. But if we don't get you a job, you don't pay anything, right?
Wow.
But that's good because then the onus is on keeping a standard, and the onus is on them to get to get them that job, so that everything's heading in the right direction.
Yeah, and like for that model, for example, students have to apply, because if they look at you and they're like, we don't think you have the work ethic to do this, we're not going to waste.
Seen that on my show reel.
Right? There's challenges, but they're figuring it out. I mean, they're venture capital backed, so they can sort of like spend a lot of money to figure it out. But that model is crazy to me, and it's working, right? So I think that there's going to be some genius out there that figures out exactly how to put these pieces together so that you get, like, I think if someone could figure out how to get 75 to 80% of the experience of going to college, not 100%, because it's like anything else, you get diminishing returns. That last 10% takes 90% of the effort and money, right?
To be fair, I think like School of Motion is probably 80% there right now, simply because Stanford's all online now.
That's true. What is it? Harvard. I remember when Harvard announced that they were going to be all streaming this year, and there was this meme going around where it was like,
"It's all right, we got a Slack
Netflix
connection.
$8 a month, Disney Plus, Harvard 50 grand." Yeah, yeah.
I do feel sorry for him. I do feel sorry for the students. Obviously, circumstances or whatever, but man, I'd be pissed off if I was paying that amount of money for university. Like, I know the UK right now is about roughly 10 grand a year for a degree, which is, to me, is a huge amount of money. Because when I was at university, we thought it was a lot, and we paid about £3,000 a year, like, whatever it was, 18 years ago. Like, but 30 grand a year is astronomical. And then America is just like, what, a couple, for a whole degree is probably about $200,000 or something. It's just nuts. Yeah, even more, crazy.
With
money.
interest on the loans and all of that, it can easily be over $300,000.
Yeah. That's just
Do
nuts.
you need to pay the loan just when you get a job, or you need to start paying?
No, and actually it's even worse than that, because in the US, you have to start paying the loans back typically after you graduate.
Wow.
You can pause them. If you pause them, the interest keeps growing. So now you owe more.
Even if you're not working?
Correct. Even if you're not working.
Wow.
And then here's the best part though. So in the United States, we have bankruptcy laws. And so if you buy a home and then you can't afford the payments anymore, the bank comes, they take your home, and then 7 years later, that's off your credit basically, and you don't have to pay the loan back, right? Or you can declare bankruptcy, you don't pay the loan back, it ruins your credit, but you're off
it's
the
similar
hook.
here.
With student loans, you cannot discharge them through bankruptcy. I think it's the only kind of loan. I'm not sure about medical debt too, but I know for student loans in the United States, you cannot get rid of them no matter what. And so you could theoretically be old enough to start collecting Social Security, which is sort of like our pension. And the government will garnish it. They'll take money out if you still owe. It's crazy. And so you can imagine if you owe 200, I knew students that graduated from Ringling with $200,000 in loans. And some of them went on to do amazing things and probably are, going to pay it off pretty quickly and be fine. Mm-hmm. Some are not.
Yeah,
some
it's really hard.
Not. And,
because in UK, you just pay when you get a job, and you need to get a certain amount. I don't remember
salary, isn't it?
Yeah. You need to get I don't remember the amount,
but you need 25. I think it's about
25.
It's about 25, isn't it, roughly?
And that they take a small percentage, so people pay through. Some people never end pay. They carry on. But
so what happens what happens in America if you can't? You graduate and then you're working at Waffle House or whatever. You're not going to be able to pay. It's like a mortgage. Like 300 grand is like a good first time home.
But they can't take your diploma back, no?
In Florida, that's a big house.
Damn.
Yeah.
What's the Florida man going to do?
He's going to take his pet gator up to the bank.
That's right.
I think I have friends in this situation, right? I went to Boston University, and I was really lucky because I got academic scholarships. So I didn't have to pay full tuition. I think I had to pay half. And at the time, tuition at Boston University was, I think with room and board and everything baked in, I want to say it was $28,000 a year, which was one of the most expensive colleges in the country. And I got to pay half that, right?
But that in hindsight, that looks like a really great deal.
I looked. BU, I think, is $79,000 a year now. So it's gone up 4x.
Jeez.
4x. I'm trying. I think my numbers are right. It might be 3x, but anyway. But the point is, I was in a film and television program. All right, I have a diploma in the other room. It says film and television. You can imagine how often I've been asked for that diploma, and how impressed people would be if they saw that diploma, right?
But
did you put it up on the wall just to make sure people see it to get that money's worth?
To be honest, it was in my desk drawer in the bottom drawer up until about 6 months ago. I finally got it framed. And here's the thing too, it's kind of I'm torn when I talk about this stuff, because I loved college. I had an amazing time. And for me, when I think of college, I don't really remember a single class I took, and nothing that I do. There actually was one class, literally one class inside of a class. So one day where I saw Adobe After Effects being opened and used. Other than that, almost nothing I learned in college is what I do professionally, right? And I had this conversation with our marketing director, Holly Fung. She said the exact same thing, right? That's very typical. So for me, the value I got from college was I grew up in Fort Worth, Texas, in the South, and I got to go live in. Yeah, okay. Go to the stockyards, get some good good Mexican food there. So and then I got to go live in Boston, right, for 4 years. And it's just a completely different universe. And I got to meet some of my best friends. I met my wife, you know, I got to live in a big city. None of that really had much to do with Boston University though, right? If you really unpack it, and that's why I was saying I like to unpack the whole experience of learning.
Yeah.
You know, when we say college is such a good thing, and it is, what are we really saying is the good thing? Is it the, you know, is it the history class that they make you take because that's what their liberal arts requirement is? You know, is that what we're talking about? Is it the experience of joining a fraternity, which I did, and throwing up in a basement at 2 a.m, right? Which I
think that is it.
Yeah. You know, I mean, for me, it's the experience of like, you're on your own for the first time. You're around people. I mean, especially coming from Fort Worth, which is actually like a pretty diverse place, but it's not like Boston where you've people from 150 countries, just, you know, and you're exposed to just every culture under the sun. It's awesome. That experience was amazing, right? Did I need to go to Boston University? Did I need to pay the tuition to get that experience? Or was there maybe some other way I could have gone about it? And at the time, I definitely would never have thought that.
Yeah.
But now I'm thinking ahead. I have a 10-year-old, I have an 8-year-old, I got a 5-year-old. And I want them to have that same experience at some point. But I don't want them to take on that debt, you know? So how else can we get that experience plus knowledge that's useful and employable into their brains?
I feel like, I don't know about Thiago, but what I got from university was, I think it makes you more of a whole character sooner, more of a whole person sooner in terms of like problem solving, how to deal with other people, be that clients or be that the person on the street or whoever. I think that's what you get out of university. It's not necessarily the degree or the course that you go to, but it's the bit around it.
It's the experience. Yeah.
I think it's the experience, and I don't know. I still believe going back to the same subject is the networking. You know, I think. Depending on career you follow, you know, the people you know, the people you meet on the university, make the friendship helps a lot. And I see quite a lot this moving to London. I'm being here, it's going to be 18 years in the end of this month. And when I move, it's like reborn, you know, because back in Brazil, I know people like, even we opened a studio last year in Brazil. You have connection, you still have friends, you know, and they work in agencies nowadays. When I came to London, it's all new. You don't have anyone. So you need to build up that all again. I've got you know. But
then I moved away, so screw you.
But you need to build up that, you know, and the relationship, the networking you create in your life when you're in the university, I think that helps a lot, especially if people work in the same field as you. And as James said, you know, if you're paying that amount and got a lot of wealth people, you got more chance to have the right connections with you. Let's say like that. You can think a little bit more on that way. But one thing I want to touch base, because I think for you two is different, because of course, James, you English and live in England, and you American and live in America. But for someone come from other country, a diploma, you know, I'm not going to say I'm against, because I think it's a waste of time, the 4 years. I think depending on career you fall in, depends, you know, if you're going to want to be a doctor, it's different. But if you fall in more like a motion design.
I've never seen a doctor with a motion graphics degree.
No.
You'd be surprised the students we get. I think one of the first students we ever got was a dentist who wanted to learn After Effects. He was pretty good at it, actually. Yeah.
But the key point for me is like when you're trying to apply for a visa. I've got a lot of Brazilian friends that work in US, you know, and when you're trying to apply for a visa, a diploma worth so much.
I know,
you know,
yeah,
and I'm not sure if it's still the same nowadays, but it used to be equivalent to 10 years you work in the field. You need to have 10 years to prove, you know, to be able to be a professional. And when a diploma worth the same as the 10 year, so it's really depend where you're going. I don't think as education worth, but you know, it's still buying
you a backup plan. Yeah. I think it gives you a backup plan, and it shows a certain amount of commitment if you take it into some other industry. It's like, look, you know, I'm committed to this, so I can do this, so therefore I'm not going to screw over whatever the next employer will be. I think it's something along those lines.
I think I mean, so Tiago, I mean, what you're saying is 100% true, and I know it's still an issue in the United States. I just was talking to somebody about this, like, and to me so when I hear stuff like that, it honestly just makes me sick to my stomach because it just seems so outdated, you know?
It is,
And
yeah.
I think what it all comes down to is that right now I think we're in the middle of like a pretty humongous shift in not just education, but work and the way companies hire, right? And I think that things like bureaucracy are lagging behind. So 50 years ago, if someone wanted to come to the United States or go to London from Brazil, and you have to, figure out how to convince them that like, okay, I should be eligible to stay here for 6 months, right? I need a work visa or something. There was no easy way for them to know if you actually knew what you were doing, if you actually had something to offer, right? And that is changing slowly, but like in creative fields and in software development, like that's almost gone on the employment side. It's not gone on like the government side where, if you want to like stay in the US, you have to reapply. And I've helped several artists with this process. So I'm familiar with it. And you have to write a letter and have the lawyer sign it and all of this. But in terms of getting a job, really, like if a company wants to hire a motion designer or a graphic designer or a web designer or a software developer,
it's all about the work here.
They want to see that you're good at it. And the diploma was a shortcut. It was like a way that they don't have to do any work. Someone else did the work, right? Essentially,
It's the vetting process.
Colleges are almost like, like a headhunter, like they're finding talent, they're filtering, and they're finding the best people. And the thing is that now, School of Motion, so we are equipped to do that in motion design. We haven't really built a process around it yet. We're starting to, but we have thousands of alumni all over the planet at varying skill levels, at varying different, skill sets, 3D,
Who's
2D,
the worst?
hand-drawn. Once we get our act together and can actually help, filter and vet alumni at scale, it's going to be really easy for us to basically tell companies, you want this person, you want this person, you want this person. And the diploma it'll never come up, Like I tell people all the time, you don't need a degree in this. You still need a degree if you're trying to apply for a visa. It does make it easier, but my hope is that will eventually go away too. And I don't know exactly how, but that's the way it seems to be pointing. All of these things are converging.
Yeah.
So do you think, like an organization like School of Motion and what have you, could maybe come together with other like online like animation schools like Gobelin, Super Infocom, or what have you? Well, not they're not online, are they? They're physical, but right now they're online. But anyway,
Right.
And have some kind of standard that everyone adheres to that becomes a recognized standard, like a diploma that becomes recognized worldwide. So that would be super useful, like you say, especially if it's recognized by governments and applying for visas. Because at the end of the day, the animation industry and motion design industry is a relatively transient industry. Like, people come in London for a couple of years and they'll go to New York, go to LA and what have you. So having something like that would be super useful.
I mean, that would be useful in every industry on the planet, and that, I think, and the thing is there's different versions of that and they all have their own problems. So no one's fully solved it. Like, for example, and you may know this, you can be certified in Adobe After Effects. You can go get a certification. There's other apps you can do this in, and I don't know if there's a version of that, like with AIGA, like certifying you as a graphic designer. I think the issue is just that, like, what does that even mean?
It just means you're competent in using the package. It doesn't mean you're competent as a designer or competent as an animator.
Side, no? It's more on the technical
it's all technical
side.
Based.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think so we've thrown around ideas like we've had some opportunities to, for example, partner with a college here where they could offer School of Motion classes and offer some sort of like certificate or maybe even like a degree, right? Using our classes. So there's ways that we can sort of partner and do things like that. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I think I I get caught up in like ideas like you just threw out, which is like a really cool idea, but I'm like, man, where would I even start? That's such a big
It's
idea.
the logistics are just crazy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. And I kind of, and this is just like my personal problem when I attack things, is I always try to see the entire thing before I take one step towards it. And I think for something like that, it's like you could solve that problem by probably just talking to a lot of people like you two that like, look at reels and hire, and like what, like actually this is a good opportunity with like an audience. What would actually be helpful to you? Like if you like, what would you, if you could contact me or someone on my team and say, we have 3 projects coming up and we need a good cinema 4D generalist. We need a character animator, that also knows Redshift, and we need a cell animator, and we want level A, level B, and level D. Like, like how would you sort of like to see this work?
Yeah, this is one thing I want to ask you, because you're talking about, you guys have so many people that study with you guys, some really good guys out there. How, for us, is me and James been talking about freelance for so long, how to trying to help the community and everything. And for me, I don't know if in US it's easy to find people that study with you guys, but like for me running Cookie here, it is really more difficult. I don't know if you have a tool where we can find students that work with you guys, but
not yet, but pretty soon actually we are going to have that, where you can sort of it's basically going to be like a jobs board on steroids, where it'll be a traditional jobs board plus sort of an ability to sort of filter and find people. But the problem, so here's what I'm finding. Most of the time when people reach out to me and say, hey, we're looking for a freelancer for next month for a big project. And I'm like, awesome. Here's our jobs board. Go post that job on there and you'll get 300 people applying to it. Nobody wants that anymore, right?
Yeah.
What they want is 3 names. They want us to pick it, right? And so the challenge is the 3 names that I give you, Tiago, right, would not be the same 3 names as if, like, I don't know, someone in Jacksonville, Florida wrote to me and said, I have a tiny agency and we handle all of the local ads for all of the car dealerships around here, and I need a junior animator to animate spots all day long.
Yeah.
It's totally different. And so that's kind of where I feel like, you can have some sort of broad certification. You can have, you can have standards. Really, it's almost like it's a challenge, right? It's like you need taste, and you need some way of filtering that taste.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a Jacksonville degree, huh?
I didn't mean to throw Jacksonville under the bus. I just right. But it's like, and this is actually something I was just talking to somebody about. It's like, I got into this industry looking at MK12 and PSYOP, and, I like obsessed over Motionographer. It was my homepage for many years. And I looked way up to the top of the mountain, and that's where I wanted to go. Right. And it's easy, and I don't know how you two are, but I assume that like you probably at some point have been on that path, at least for a while, where you're, like I've seen the other people you've had drinks with, Gunner and Golden Wolf. I mean, these are the top studios. And the thing is that is such a small fraction of the industry. It's actually
the tip of the iceberg.
It's very small. And so, so I'm also kind of hesitant to create things just for that.
It's a very small market, isn't it? At the end of the day, like the people you see on the inspirational websites, like they are the tip of the iceberg. The bulk of the work is below the ocean line, kind of thing.
Yeah, and we have so many alumni where they don't actually want to work at those places because now through just through meeting people or live streams like this where they get to see artists talk about things, or our podcast. That is one sort of lifestyle, and that's one sort of hustle that you can go after if you want to do it. That's not for everybody. And so I try not to have any sort of like, I don't even like ranking artists at this point. I sort of feel like the the 45-year-old person who works for AstraZeneca, which is like a pharmaceutical manufacturer, and they're doing internal explainer videos for the CEO about a new drug, and they're getting paid 130 grand a year with stock options.
I was about to say, they're probably making the best money.
Like,
they can pay off that loan.
Who's to say that they didn't actually win compared to the junior animator at, I'm trying to think of it.
That's absolutely right.
A studio that's closed, so I can use their name because I don't want to throw anyone under the bus. But like we all know, there's studios where if you're in your 20s, and you go there, you're gonna work 100 hours a week, right? So, and you may want to. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I wanted to. I loved it, right? So that's kind of, I guess, a long way of getting to this challenge of what you two might want versus what AstraZeneca might want. Two totally different things.
I think the hard thing for me, like he said, people don't want to post, like when you go big companies, you got the HR, then select the people, the studio, like for me, we are a small studio. We like to call a boutique. And in the end of the day, I'm end up choosing who is going to work. I need to look through the emails. And you already had that busy day running the project, running the studio, and then you need to check 300 people. And in these 300 people, you're probably going to find, like, if you luck, 3 names that is what you want. And that if you luck, we talk. And so what I think is, like you're saying, is coming back to the recommendation, like going to you guys as you recommend. And this, you have a look at the studio, you work on the industry, you recommend. It's the same, like, I think the main reason we always work with friends or with people we worked before, because it's more, save a lot of money, like I used to lose a lot of money in the studio trying people and trying to be too nice and hire someone for 2 months.
I get it though. You want to be nice. You want to try to help them and build them up,
but you're losing money. That's the problem. So it's again, like you have the reputation as a school of motion. Like the recommendation is the same. If I go to a freelance work with me and he knows what I want. But actually, without that, I think it's really hard.
This leads on to probably another question, like how do you guys at School of Motion gear people up to work in the industry? Because I think in the UK, that's one thing that's really lacking. And it's also the one thing the French schools like Gobelins and Brimcom do really well. And also, what's it called? The Swedish school.
Hyper Island.
Hyper Island, yeah. Hyper Island's amazing. That's really cool.
They're awesome. But they gear people up to work in the industry. So when they graduate, they can go straight into a company and it won't be like a really strange setting. Whereas a lot of universities in the UK, it's completely alien to working within the industry. So how do you guys
I think they're getting better
adapt
now
to this?
Here, James.
Is it? All right. Well, maybe my information's a bit dated, but still, the point's still the same, or the question's still the same.
I've heard from I've heard from various studio owners that like this school, the students come in and they have a good attitude. This one, I think they're telling them they're all going to be art directors right out of college. And, so I think there are some schools that have reputations. And I think the truth is School of Motion has a little bit of an advantage here because our students, when I say students and I say alumni, they're not exactly the same thing as Hyper Island or Gobelins or something like that, right? They're not 18-year-olds that come in, they're there 4 years, they come out as 22-year-olds. These are, for the most part, people already working at least in some industry. If not motion design, they're working in web design or graphic design or photography.
It's like bolstering skills.
So they already have like some experience just being an adult in the working world. Now that's not everybody. We also have 18-year-olds and we've actually had 14-year-olds take classes, right? So we have that too. And for the really young students where they're like maybe not going to college and they're taking a school motion class, I hope that is not all they're doing. I hope they're taking their classes and then going out and working and having experiences and traveling and doing other things because like we were talking about before, School of Motion cannot replicate 4 years leaving your parent's house and living in a strange land, right? Like it just can't do that. So our students typically though are not that, and they're self-selecting because they are not, you know, in the US, like when you grow up in our school system, you are basically put on train tracks, and it's like all train tracks point to college, right?
Yep.
And
It's
every
similar
kid,
in the UK,
it's
yeah.
just shoved, like everyone's pushed as hard as they can to go to college. You don't even think about it. By the time you're signing the student loan papers, you don't have a clue what a student loan is or what money actually is. You're just going. But if you take a school of motion class, typically you've pulled out your credit card or someone has, and they have paid for that class. So it's kind of a different thing. So I think we have a self-selection bias also with our students. But the other thing too is that we set up our classes very specifically to be like it is in the real world. And this is not how every school is, right? Like I talked with, we have a podcast episode with Joe Donaldson, who he would be great to come. Although I don't think he drinks, but you know, maybe you get some like kombucha or something. But he's great. He went to art school in Chicago, and he told me his art school experience was basically like free form and find your voice and just make experimental stuff. And we're not going to like pretend that this is client work. We're just going to make neat stuff, right? That was mostly what he did. And he said that was amazing, right? He's a special guy and he's brilliant. And so he kind of took that, and he'd already worked in it. He worked in news before that. So he already had some experience. That's not how school of motion works at all. We don't really do that. There's little pieces of that where it's like, here's some art history, here's an experimental kind of thing. But almost everything we teach is this is what it's going to look like when a client hires you to do it, or when an art director tells you to do it, or when a designer gives you boards. This is literally exactly what you're going to see. And so my philosophy has always been, the number one thing I want if someone takes a school of motion class is I want them to be more effective as a motion designer. And I guess if I'm going to be really specific, I want them to be able to make a living doing motion design. And so all of the, you know, the sort of exploration and experimental stuff, I think is amazing. But I think that for a lot of students, it can kind of wash over them and not actually get them anywhere. And so currently, and maybe this will change in the future, we've sacrificed that to have a little bit more tangible real world stuff in our classes. So I think that does help too.
I think that's quite good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, one of the questions I was going to ask a while ago is kind of a two-pronged question. It was like, first of all, how long does it take to train a tutor? And secondly, how do you make sure you maintain a standard, especially when I guess your tutors are quite worldwide, they're not just American based, they're quite worldwide.
Yep.
So how do you maintain a standard kind of across the board? Because I imagine that's probably quite a difficult thing to achieve.
Yeah, it is. And we've gotten better at it too, like sort of over the years. So our teachers, and so just to be super clear, so like what we call a teacher or an instructor, that's the person who is like in the videos in the class teaching you, right?
Yeah.
So using Animation Bootcamp as an example, I'm the teacher. So if you take that class, it's me talking just like this, and I'm teaching you stuff, and then you see my screen. When you take Animation Bootcamp and you do, say, the ball bounce exercise, there's an exercise where you have to make a golf ball bounce on like hardwood floor.
That's a classic.
You have to make a bowling ball bounce on a carpet. And then if you really want to get nuts, you have to, there's a little scene with a bunch of boxes, different heights, and you have to make it bounce kind of off the boxes. And anyway,
I got to say, it's really interesting for such a simple sounding tutorial, how much difference the execution makes. Like you can tell straight away who's a good animator and who's not. Like, you know, the timing is a key.
That, I mean, it's funny, just it's kind of on a tangent, but that exercise in that class. So originally I was thinking that's going to be the first lesson. When you actually get down to it, a ball bounce is so complicated. So like in After Effects specifically, like I think it may be if you just drew it frame by frame and you don't have to think about like, you know, the X curve and the Y curve and they're different. And what if there's rotation? You can just kind of visually see it. Maybe it's different, but in After Effects, I think that's like week 4 out of 6 weeks of like classes. Because it is so technical to get it right. And then like as a bonus, there's a stripe on the ball if you want to like add rotation, which is like a whole other thing. So anyway, so the instructors make that, right? And we really kind of scour the earth for the best instructors we can find. We recruit them to make the class. Now we've even started sort of trying them out like ahead of time and having them do tutorials and other content for us to see if they have, 2 or 3 of those like overlapping skills. And once they do, then we say, okay, here's what we'd like to do. We'd like to book you basically for 6 to 9 months. And we pay like a pretty big fee to these instructors. And we basically have a full-time creative director on our side. And that's either Ryan Summers or EJ Hassenfratz. And we have a full-time producer, and we have a full-time video editor. And they're both amazing.
I mean, they're all. I mean, I've only met Ryan though.
Yeah. So there's you're basically given a production team, and they work with you every single day on this class until it's done. It takes months, and then we run, and then we and the whole time, and they're writing as you're. I mean, and we also we hire designers to make the elements for the class. Like our beginner After Effects class, the final project, and these are people who this is their first time using After Effects. At the end, we give them boards and a voiceover track, and the boards were done by Ariel Costa. And it was so fun because I hired him.
That was so 2 weeks ago.
And I said, I know, yeah. What's he done lately? Have you seen the NFL thing he just did? It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Amazing.
He's sick, but I told him, I was like, listen, you need these boards to be something you could animate only using linear keyframes, pre-comps, parenting, no fancy animation, maybe some fractal noise. Like I gave him this tiny little box to design in, and he just crushed it. And so, So anyway, so we provide all that, right? And at the end of it, and then we package it up, we market it, we find and train and hire teaching assistants, and boom, now this class is like a representation of what was inside of Mark Christensen's brain or Sander Von Dyke's brain. Like it's an encapsulation of their knowledge in this domain, right? That part we've got down to a science, and it's very painful. I tell instructors when they come on to make a class with us, this will be the hardest thing you've ever done. If you've ever, run a marathon or something, you're going to feel right at the end, this was the dumbest decision you ever made, and you'll never want to do it again. But then after a few months, once the reviews start to come in and the students start sending you emails, you're going to want to do another one. The teaching assistants, and that is really the key to the school motion experience, is having that person that can then lead you through that class. We've had really good luck actually finding alumni who have taken the class and who understand our brand and have been really engaged and active, and sort of training them up a little bit. Here's how to make your critiques better. On this specific assignment, we now have guides for every class for teaching assistants. So they know on this assignment, we want you to really focus on, did they use a triad color scheme? Because that was the instructions. Right. And if they did, were those colors appropriate? If the brief was, this is a fall theme, and they used a bunch of blue and green, then you need to let them know, okay, you didn't do it right. So we haven't really had a very good training program for that recently, but now with Frank coming on full time, he's building out a really kind of detailed one. And every TA now gets a full job interview process basically. And they do test critiques and stuff like that. So I think we've always had really good luck with teaching assistants, and we've had very few that didn't really work out. And I think it's because there's so many artists that just want to help and want to teach the next generation. But now our standards are going up, and we're pulling in people that, are freelancing a buck is their day job. Wow. And then they're critiquing. It's pretty cool to see. So it's really just about, honestly, from my perspective, it's been on the class side, just putting as much energy as I can into it. And then on the teaching assistant side, trying to enable my team to just find the best people they can and keep them. And we pay our teaching assistants really well. And that's really the secret, it's not a motion design centric thing. It's almost just you could go read any business book and they'll tell you to do that. Yeah. That's basically what we figured out.
It says hire good people.
Yeah. It's harder than it sounds, but especially in motion design, your studio, it's make or break based on the artists you hire, right?
Yeah,
if you don't get good people, the work's not good.
It's tricky because good people get hired. Are hired quite quickly. So to try and find people who can step in within their schedule is also very difficult. But,
let me ask you about that, because I've seen that too. There's this level of motion designer out there that, you know, most people kind of strive to be like, you know, a Claudio Salas or B. Grandinetti, Joyce Ho, you know, someone like that. And they're rare if you're looking for them publicly. Like if you're like, who's got their Instagram up to date and who's on Twitter and whose portfolio site looks really good. But then, you know, I went a couple of years ago, I was in New York City and I got to go visit Buck, which was super cool for me. And Daniel Offinger is creative director there, and he's showing me around. And they had, I don't know, probably, I think it's quadrupled at least since then. But I mean, they probably had 40 artists just on computers working. And every single screen, it was like, each screen was cooler looking than the last. And I'm getting introduced to people and I've never heard their names. They're completely unknown in the industry as far as like public facing social media presence artists. But there's actually a lot more of them than you'd think. They are really hard to find though. And I don't know how these big studios find them, but
I think it used to be a lot more hard. It's still hard to find, you know, but I think like it just comments some names then is out there, you know, it's people, it's more like, not gonna say a public figure, but in motion design, but it's people then trying to help community or trying to push things, you know. But in the past, it used to be really hard because we didn't have Instagram or internet. But now it's so the prize is so many good people, and it's the same with the studio. You're saying like Buck and all that. That is just the tip of the iceberg because it's so many small good studios that doesn't want to be public as Buck, but they still really good out there.
I remember like quite a number of years ago now, I was talking to a guy called Matt Lambert, and I can't remember where he was working. It was either LA studio or a New York studio, and he was saying he was working with a group of people who are, you know, that are amazing at what they do. None of them have a website. None of them have a social media presence. And I think that's the kind of thing you're getting at where, you know, it's just people who are just really amazing at their job, but they kind of fly under the radar. But then they're probably full-time, you know, permalance at Buck or permalance at whoever. I think that's, it's just kind of interesting.
I think one of the things that's blown my mind, and I wonder like how much insight the rest of the industry has. Like if I asked you to, how many After Effects animators are there in the world? What would
at least
guess?
72.
There's at least a few dozen.
Yeah.
Right. But like what number would you guess? Would you like, I'm curious, like what scale you think it's gotten to?
I don't know, man. Probably over 10,000 easily.
I would say a couple of million. If you're talking worldwide, I mean, the amount of like dodgy licenses in Asia, Russia, UK, wherever, it's got to be, you know, it's got to be in the millions. I bet it's like 2 million, something around there. But it also depends on what level of After Effects animator. Are you talking about a person who can move text from point A to point B for a corporate job, or are you talking like, you know, someone who knows the difference between, you know, like a brick bouncing and a rubber ball?
Right. So that I'm talking about can put two scale keyframes together and make the text grow. So I don't know. I actually don't know what the number is right now, but I can tell you 5 or 6 years ago, and I think this was at Adobe Video World or something like that. I can't use his name because he'll probably get fired. But he worked at Adobe, and he told me that there was something like 500,000 licenses of After Effects that are actively being used. And I guarantee you it's at least quadruple that now, right? Because of like tech.
That probably wasn't far off then. That probably wasn't far off.
Yeah. So it would not surprise me if 2 million people use After Effects like on a regular basis right now. How many of them could do really good work for you, Tiago, right? Like a cookie, like who are at that level that also have the design chops, the animation chops? 0.5% of that, maybe 0.1%. That's still a ton of people though, right? Like that's
it is a lot. But it's still the price,
they're spread around the world.
But the price is not to find. The price, my problem with freelance is to find good freelance. Like we get a lot of projects come like today on Tuesday, and they want us to start this week or want us to start next week. What is the chance for get a really top freelance or really good freelance to start next week? Almost impossible.
Right.
So that's why big studios like Buck or, Golden Wolf and places like that, they have rolling project, even if the guy is quiet for a month and the guy is that good, worth to keep that guy,
Right.
just because in the end of the day, that monthly salary is not that bad, and they can put him in a personal project.
That's why I was unemployed for so long.
I think it's not difficult to find good people. It's difficult to find the good people in the right moment you need. I think that's my biggest problem running the studio. If I have 1 month ahead, if a job comes next month, it's no problem for me to get the best people to work on that project. But if the project comes next week, it's really hard. That's what makes the trick with freelance. And that's why I'm not going to say the bigger the studio, but the biggest the network you have with a good talent, biggest chance you win that project or you do a really good project. Because sometimes it's, you get good chance to, like to pitching a massive project, but everyone in the studio is busy. Everyone could be good to help you pitch on that project is busy. So it's make really hard to compete. And like big studios like Buck, we're talking about 250 staff, that's 200 staff. So, and you look places like them and they have people all the time. It's no way you can compete, because is a pitch come there, for me in Cookie, a pitch, we need move people around, or I need to get the ideas in their head, get the right designer to help us. And if I can't get that designer, it's get really hard because everyone is busy. But Buck is gonna have like at least 5 guys sitting that they can pull out of a project or do enough. They say, just go and pitch, guys. It's about timing is the problem with photography.
So wait, Tiago, let me ask you this, because I heard of something recently that this is like this is the same problem, and I know you know this. Like every studio, probably unless you have hundreds of staff, every studio has this problem. So especially small ones, and it seems like the only solution to that problem. So I guess there's 2 ways you solve it. One is there's somebody figures out a system where almost like, I don't know, like if I need a WordPress developer, I can go to an agency that will, for a fee, give me a WordPress developer. And they've vetted them, and I know that they'll have somebody that's available, right?
Yeah.
And people have tried that for motion design. I remember when I was running my studio, we tried a couple of these sort of talent agencies, and it never worked out. I've never
they're pretty crap.
It doesn't really work, right?
Plenty in UK. They don't really understand. They're good for what you said before, to work in agents and do that middle level project. But as soon as you want to kick, a good project, they don't really understand us. It's really hard.
Yeah. So I feel like if someone can sort of solve that problem, and like, we're sort of circling that problem at School of Motion in the motion design world, because we have a really big Rolodex, and we have like we have the capability of sort of like vetting artists and being able to like sort by this one knows Cinema 4D and this one knows this. But it seems like the other way is studios need a way of hiring staff earlier than is financially feasible, right? So like if you, like, would your life be easier if you could just hire 2 more artists and have, and it's like their salaries are paid for 2 years and you don't have to worry about it, and now you don't need freelancers all the time? Or does that not solve the problem?
That's an overhead question, really.
Yeah, that's then the problem is though. I think that comes in that situation is if you got enough projects running to have all the full-time stuff. Right. I think it's so. But the problem is if you don't want to scale the studio as well, it's the problem. You run the studio before,
Yeah.
You run the studio before, and we're talking about. Sometimes we have too many projects. Sometimes we have not enough.
Right.
And when it comes to many projects, you always scared you're not gonna have enough late. And if the project is good, you don't want to lose the opportunity. Even if you have the right, doesn't exist a magic number of stuff, because
Right.
you're gonna be busier than you need to, than you can support, and you're gonna be quiet than you need. So it's
Right.
always, you're gonna spend more money and less money, you know. So I think when you have, for me, ideally is to keep the studio small, have my core team where, you know, we can pull creative together, we can pull the jobs together, and we expand to freelance. But that gives me the headache, you know, to find the right people. Luckily, you know, we've been running SNE Evil for 12 years, you know, and I know a lot of people in the industry. That helps me quite a lot. But it's still really tricky. It's not about knowing the people, it's knowing who is free when you need.
Right.
That's what makes, you know, is the million question job. And what you're saying, like we walk in circle, and to solve the problem is easy. You know, if you want to stop School of Motion and create that agency
Right.
to support freelancers to studios, that would work. If I do that, would work. But would you do that? No, I wouldn't do as well, because it's a full-time job.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would hire someone to do it, right?
But that person,
Right?
person can't get the same, because doesn't have the same knowledge as you.
Yeah. So
You know,
it's really interesting, Thiago. Like the last few years, with School of Motion, I almost never open After Effects and like animate stuff. It's really rare these days. You know, I really am like learning more how to hire better, and how to, you know, manage the finances better, and, you know, learning about culture and things. You know, we have I think we just hit 25 full-time staff. So there's like this whole other level of things that I have to learn about now. And I think that because I used to think exactly, I think the way you're thinking, which is like, the problem is you and I can look at someone's portfolio and know probably in 5 seconds if they're going to work out, if they even have a chance of working out as a freelancer. And if the answer is yes, then you watch the rest of it. And if you still say yes, then you need to have a private conversation with them, or like try them out for 2 days. But you can tell really quickly. Versus if I hired somebody who used to run a staffing agency, and they know all about placing people and doing sales and all of that and getting commissions, but they don't know how to tell if someone's good. How do we connect those things? I think there's a way, right? I think there is. I don't think anyone's
There's a
solved
course
it yet,
in
but
this.
yeah.
Like, you know, a big
maybe
big
it's
part.
the new course of School of Motion.
Yeah, I was just thinking that, because obviously motion design is one, you know, the animation part is only one aspect.
Right.
Whereas like you guys talk about like hiring people and looking at and knowing who's good to hire and potentially a good fit is also, and people management at the end of the day is an equally valid part of motion design.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the studios that you know, like studios that have come and gone, you know, I don't know, Nail Gun, or, you know, like studios like that, they often, it's not that like the work, I mean, it's almost never that the work wasn't good enough and they weren't getting jobs. It was like, it's very hard to run a business, you know? And
Absolutely.
Thiago, I think it's funny because what you were talking about before is exactly like, that kind of sums up the challenge. It's like, when it's hard to be ready for the opportunity until the opportunity comes. Because if you get ready and then it doesn't come, you're spending all this money and you have to manage your cash flow. And if you don't do that, the game is over, right? And that's, as a business owner, that's the scariest part, is like watching the number in the bank account start to go down and you keep waiting for it to go back up and it doesn't, right? So that's why I was kind of asking you about that, because there's some interesting things I think people are trying out there. Like there's this idea in tech, you know, in tech, like you can go and you can get investors and you can raise an angel round and get $1 million to try your idea. Or if you have an idea and it's already working, you can raise a Series A, and then you could basically have runway. And now you can sort of scale a little bit faster. And there's this other concept of an accelerator, where it's basically like you have a business and, let's say you're doing $500,000 a year or something like that. You want to get it to 2 million a year. The accelerator is basically a business coach and some cash. And in exchange, they own 10% of your studio or something like that. But like, I'm wondering if maybe there's somebody out there that will try that, because there really is a chicken and an egg situation with a lot of small studios, right? And I think once you get to a certain, I don't know what the magic number is, but I feel like depending on what part of the country you're in, if you can get past 2 million a year in revenue, then most likely you've diversified your clients and it's going to be a little bit easier to have predictable sales. I kind of pulled that number out of my butt. Maybe that's not high enough, but like, I know that if you're at 500,000 in sales a year, you're still scrambling, right? And so if you gave up 10% of your studio in exchange to have someone push you faster and let you hire 2 people right away at no risk because it's their money, right? I'm just kind of spitballing here. Like, does any of that sound like insane to you, or is that like?
I think that sounds similar to what happens in the UK, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you can get investors. The prime of scaling a studio fast. I don't know. When I started working in Brazil, I used to work for a production house. It's quite big nowadays, but it used to be small, and I used to love the feeling when the owner come every week and tell us what is gonna happen, where the company is. And as we grow, we lose that and start putting like people in between, and you start losing the connection. I think for me personally, when you lose that, you lose kind of the soul of the company. You turn into like a business model. It's not more like I'm not gonna say a family-run studio, but they all friends. We go for drinks, And so when you scale too fast, it's hard because you need to put that in between people.
Right. I think there's a tipping point where you have to pick between like the family-run business and like a larger business, because at the end of the day,
it's different formats.
It has to change at some
James?
point.
Like what is that tipping point?
In my opinion, I probably think it's about. I think it's between like 20 and 30, because 20 and 30, between that is you're all friends, you're all hanging out, you're all chilling.
I think 30 is quite big already now.
Yeah, but then when it gets larger than that, in animation, it gets slightly a little bit more impersonal because your overheads get bigger, so you take on more projects and take on more people and all that kind of side of things, and that's just how it is. Although, one thing the impression I got from Buck, who obviously quite a large company in terms of animation, is that they still kept the kind of like core ethos where everyone just hangs out, chills, and vibed off of each other from both the LA studio and the New York studio, which I think is quite it's quite a tall order for a company of that size.
It is.
I think it is doable, but as how you go about doing it, I have no idea.
Yeah, I think it's really tricky, especially because we're talking about full times now. When you're still pushing freelance too, But when we talk like companies like Golden Wolf, Manzar's Machine, even other like Gunner, everyone is still quite small. They still like on the number going like 15 to 25 people, and that they just scale with freelance. I think when you have that, it's easy for you have that friendship and that people still access, to as a studio owner, as a creative director, you access to, even to talk to interns. As soon as you grow more than that, it's really hard, and management is really hard. Even like for a small studio like us, with all this COVID time, need to run through Slack and Frame.io jobs, man. And we had points we were with 8 freelancers in the same time in the studio, plus the full time. It just made my life a nightmare. It's just a feedback time the whole day.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's when at that point, it's like, when that's happening, are you actually designing or animating anything, or are you just managing it?
No, just directing the project and managing. I can't be if I put hands on the project. And I don't remember who said that. Took me quite I heard someone on a podcast and took them, time to understand, every time they promise they're going to work on the project, they always delay the project or end up messing the project because it comes something else. And it took me so many years. Even nowadays, I still want to work an animation on the projects.
Have to let go.
You need to let go, or you can't run the studio. You can't direct a project, if you're full on the project. I still trying when it's possible, but I can't say, oh, I'm gonna do this whole scene because suddenly gonna come a pitch. I'm gonna need to jump on the pitch, and I'm just gonna let people down. It is really hard.
Yeah.
I think
it's always a management challenge, which is like, that's not normally what we're good at as, artists.
Yeah. Well, we're creatives, we draw pictures and visual stuff. Yeah.
We need to remember, dealing with people is always hard as well. Everyone's feeling different emotions. Some people sometimes in the mood, sometimes people is happy, and you need to manage that as well. It's not just.
It's different types of people too. Yeah. It's not just the creatives that you're dealing with directly. It's also your client and all that kind of side of things, and they're usually quite different perspectives and different personalities.
Yeah, I think that, so I can tell you, like, from my experience, what's helped probably more than anything with School of Motion, because School of Motion, it's very different than a studio. And our business model is different, but the way we make classes and sort of the vibe is very similar. The best thing I ever did was find an amazing number 2 for the company. So there's a name that most people in the industry don't know, but it's funny because she's actually responsible for thousands of people like taking classes in their careers. So Elena Vandermost is the president of School of Motion, and president basically means anything related to how does School of Motion do anything that it does, right? How do we hire? How does our website work? How do we pay our bills? How do we do reviews and raises and all of those things? She's also sort of been like the product manager for a while for our website. So having someone like that, that's her superpower. Like, I'm not good at those things. I'm good at, like, I can sort of see a vague picture and I can start walking towards it and eventually get to it, right? Which sometimes it's called vision. I'm good at that. I'm terrible at, like, now how do we do that 10 more times with customer support and, repeatable with quality controls and all of that? I'm terrible at that. And I think that studios, I mean, you look at Buck, right? Like, I remember I've interviewed Ryan Honey, and it wasn't just him, right? They had
right now.
He had 2 co-founders. He had Ryan, and he had the third guy, which no one knows his name because he was like the business guy.
The ninja.
Right? Yeah. And I think that, like, maybe that's kind of the secret to a lot of studios that have sort of gotten over that hump is you have, I mean, maybe Gunner's an enigma, although I know they have an EP, right? I think they probably have somebody over there who's really good at business, because Ian and Nick are both super creative, right? So I'm imagining their vision, but
that balance.
Yeah. So I think having that, yeah.
Sorry, I was just trying to interrupt, but I think you're right. Like when creatives start a business, I think quite a few of them fail because they neglect the business side. You need to partner up with someone who's really good at the business side, and then that allows you to take care of the creative and then all that kind of side of things. And I think that's what Buck did. That's what all the major studios have done. I think
it's kind of having a boss, no? In the end of the day, it's kind of having a boss, someone that understands.
No, man, you're on equal pegging. You're on equal pegging.
Yeah.
It's different.
Well, that's actually interesting that you put it that way, though, because the truth is, like, if you had like 100 parallel universes, there's probably 99 where I work for Elena and 1 where she works for me. Like, she's actually like a much more like, sort of outwardly smart and successful looking person.
Is she like, oh, well, why do I need? why do I need you?
Yeah, I feel like I just stumbled into like, running a company. But I think like so it's funny. I actually had this conversation because we're hiring for a few positions now, and I was giving some advice to someone on my team, one of our leads who is basically leading the hiring process. And I was like, some really good advice, and I can't remember where I heard it. It was on a podcast somewhere, but it was basically you want to hire people that you could imagine yourself working for. Like it almost scares you that you would be technically their boss, because you're like, I shouldn't be their boss. They should be my boss.
Yeah.
And if you can kind of find that person, they'll push you forward. And so I wonder, like, there's probably a version of that for studios where if you find the right person with the right mindset, they'll see, hey, listen, I know this is scary, but we need to hire a designer right now, because last fall we had 2 pitches come in, and look, it's fall again. And they'll start to see things in a different way. And then they'll push you and you'll take a risk. Like what Elena did, one of the first things she did when she came on was she said, and I think we were doing classes with 200 students at a time, which I thought was a lot. And we were running it off of like this third-party platform duct taped together with like WordPress, and I made the whole thing. And she's like, we need to pay some software developers to make this. Otherwise, if this grows and you have 1,000 students taking it, it's going to tip over. And I'm like, there's no way 1,000 students are going to take this. Like, let's be honest, right? This will never grow that big. And what you're talking about is really expensive. And she pushed and pushed, and we ended up doing it. And lo and behold, she was right, So it's that chicken and the egg thing. I think sometimes you need someone who just sees the numbers and like, look, here's what it is, do it,
It's I think it's really important. I think running a studio, running a business itself, because especially we coming from the creative side, is what James said, like a lot of studios fails in the beginning because you don't really understand the business side, and this is a question I ask a lot of friends when they come to me and say, you've been running a studio and I think to open one, and I always ask them why you want to open a studio, because a lot
and then you start crying.
But a lot of artists has the mentality, I want to run my own studio, but reality they want to direct work. And they want to, in
a way, in some respects.
Yeah, it is in some way as well. But you lose a little bit that, because it's a big fight between, you need to run the studio. You can still direct the project, but you get in a level in the studio, you need to let go. You can't carry on animating. You can't carry on designing. You need to have a vision back. Where you take in the studio and stand back. And it's like hiring people better than you. Then people's gonna help you push the studio, because if you just end up being in the same place, always, you just don't move forward.
I think we should start asking some questions from YouTube and start getting towards the end.
Fuck, we just like
this is fun though.
It's been fun. I didn't realize.
I'll go refill my.
I didn't realize.
You're gonna need another old-fashioned.
Yeah. Then I'm gonna start cursing. So.
Should we
take my shirt off?
Should we? Lucky you got the shirt. I'm just naked on the bottom,
Listen, we're working from home, all right? It's part of the perk.
Should we pick 3 questions from?
Yeah, there's a few, but there's one from Guy who says he read the Freelance Manifesto and it impacted him so much.
That's awesome.
There is some point of the book. There is some point of the book. I think you can become obsolete or outdated in the short term. Do you plan on to release an updated editions?
That's a great question. Well, first off, thank you. So it's funny. That book was so much work. I can't even and I worked with a ghostwriter basically. Because there's no way I could have sat down and written that book. So I worked with this company that writes books, and basically they interview you, and then they write the book, and then they give you the book, and then you proofread it and you fix it and all that.
So did you approach them? Were you kind of like, this is my idea?
Yes. Oh yeah,
I need to find somebody.
I hired them to do it. Yeah, I've been approached once by a publishing company to make a book about motion design, and I got into the finances of it, and I was like, this makes no sense for the amount of work it'll be. So the Freelance Manifesto has, I mean, at this point, it's made, I don't know, it's made money, right?
Right.
But it was never about making money. That book, like I knew, because it cost thousands of dollars to have them do it, right? It was more about like, I have all this knowledge and I don't know what to do with it. And I had this platform, you know, and School of Motion was successful at that time. So I did it. The answer is yes. I have already outlined the second edition now. And I've already reached out to them and I'm like, how do we do a second edition? And I've gotten the price and all that. And I want to do it. My problem is I am an over yeser. I say yes to everything. And you can't really see it. Maybe like if I get out of the way, there's a poster there and it's crooked. It's like falling out of its frame, but there's a poster there and it says, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no. And I have that poster because I am an over yeser. So I have said,
is that
yes
how
to
you're
all these...
married with kids and stuff? It's like, oh, I didn't mean to. However,
exactly. I have 3 kids and I'm taking guitar lessons. But anyway, so I was planning on having it done already, and then doing an audiobook because I get asked to do an audiobook a lot because a lot of people like that. And then just a lot of things have come up. And so I still plan on doing it. But in the meantime, I'm trying to find other ways where like, the truth is very few things in that book are out of date. Now there are software tools that are out of date, right? Like, you know, maybe the tool I recommend to find someone's email address, maybe they got acquired and that's not the tool you use anymore, but there's 5 other ones.
I still use quite a few that tips.
Yeah. You know, there's like one big thing that's not in the book. And frankly, it's not in there because I never really used it to get work. And now it seems like if you're at a certain level, using like Instagram and social media is actually like a pretty good way of getting work. So I wanted to add some content around that. And in the meantime, I would just go to Motion Hatch, check out Haley's stuff. Cause she actually just released a class.
She's on the chat as well.
Yeah.
Haley's on the
Is
chat.
she in the chat?
So, you know,
oh, Haley.
Big up the Manchester crew.
Yeah, well, she'll love this. So she just released a class and it's only on sale, I think, for a few more days. It's called Client Quest, and she let me look at it. It's really, really good. And it's about how to get clients, but she's built this whole amazing system around it. And part of it is the idea of inbound sales, right? So the Freelance Manifesto is almost entirely outbound sales. You put together your persona and then you go out and you show it to people. And to be honest, I still think that's the most effective way to do it. It's also the hardest and the scariest, but it works the best.
And you have to wear a mask now.
Inbound is you get your LinkedIn set up and you post topical things on there and maybe you boost some posts. And then on Instagram, that's all set up. And maybe you use Behance. And there's things like that do work really well, but I think they tend to work a little better once you're kind of established and your work can speak for itself a little more in the beginning. Outbound all the way. But yeah, check out Client Quest. It's on Motion Hatch. It's amazing. But I am going to do a second edition. I promise you. And I'm going to go on the record and say it will be out by the end of 2021. Just so now, like I have to,
you heard
now
it,
has
guys.
to be done. I have to do it.
I mean, what else can you do when you're locked down?
Yeah, it's on YouTube, right? Like, please, can we not be locked down another 12 months? I mean, I'm in Florida, so we're not locked down. I don't know how where you guys are, like, with the lockdown stuff. But
we're probably soon to be locked down.
Right.
we got a second wave. Yeah.
Well, as long as the pubs stay open, right?
Yeah, it's still they just closing 10 p.m. now.
Okay.
Yeah, it's still good.
Yeah.
There is a question here. The name is all together. I think it's Ivan. He asked if you do consider it grow up the school for more languages. That is something I think is quite interesting because especially being online means you can be from anywhere, And when we talk in Europe itself is quite a lot of people speak English, but when I come back from Brazil, the majority doesn't speak English,
Right.
And I think education in Brazil is a little bit better than it used to be, but you don't get the quality of courses you can do online. So is any future plan for different languages?
We've talked about this a lot. And so the answer is I want to, and actually maybe there's someone out there who can help us do this. So here's the challenge. Okay. we have all of this content, right? Classes, I mean, if you took all of our classes, it would take you a few years to get through it all, probably. There's so much content, right? And the exercises and all of that. All of our instructors recorded that content in English, and we have everything transcribed, and there's captions, and you can search it and all of that. Now, it wouldn't be that much work on our end to have all of that translated to any language and have subtitles, right? And even, you can even pay people to dub over, right? The problem is that I've talked to people who have tried this. So there's this cool website called Ukramedia, and it's these two twin brothers. It's Ukramedia because they're from Ukraine originally. Yeah, and so they speak English, but they also speak Russian. And they have in the past taken tutorials from that are in Russian and translated them into English as an experiment, and literally like did a voiceover dub of a tutorial that was originally in Russian. And I asked them about that. I'm like, tell me how this goes, because I would love to do this for Portuguese, for Spanish, for, I mean, most people who speak French, it seems like, can at least understand, enough English, but like do it in French, any language we want, Arabic, Chinese. The problem is that, I mean, just listen to how I talk, and then imagine like, and all the weird stuff I say and the weird things I do with my voice and the American English things I say. And then try to imagine, someone who speaks Portuguese and grew up in Brazil trying to translate what I'm saying in time with the mouse that's moving around the screen and making jokes that won't land unless you grew up in. It's like, so the problem is, I feel like you can do it and you could get that knowledge across. You're going to make it 10% as watchable by doing that. And so what's the solution? The solution is you need entirely new teachers. You need, I think, native speakers to teach this stuff.
I agree.
And fortunately, there's a lot of amazing Brazilian teachers and Spanish teachers. I know Jorge from Ordinary Folk has done, I forget what website it is, I'm blanking. Someone in YouTube will probably know, but he did a Spanish language class. And so like, there's resources like that out there. What I would love to do is figure out, and we actually are kind of starting to do this, figuring out how we can take the School of Motion model and our software, and we know how to build classes, and we know how to like ship camera gear around, and we know how to edit these things and put them on the internet and market them and hire teaching assistants. We know how to do all of that. Can we let someone else have that model? Do it over here, do it, for Brazil, right? Do it for Portuguese speakers. Do it, then over here, like do a version that's for Spanish speakers. And over here, do a version, for Italian speakers. Like, it seems like it's doable. We just need the talent, that wants to do it.
Because it's not just a translation. You basically need a teacher. You need someone fluent English. Yeah. Like you need me, not to be honest. No, but
that's what saying, we'll talk.
But you need someone that work in the field in English then can translate for the other language, because if you're just missing translation, it's quite hard.
And like you could it'd be easy, I think, Tiago, for someone like you, like if you took animation boot camp and you took all of the lessons and all of that and you just re-recorded them, but you just did it yourself, right? You'd speak how you speak, and you did it in Portuguese, then that would be way better than you translating my words and just dubbing over the video. And so I think and I'm kind of like a big stickler for quality. So like, I can't be happy with like, well, at least it'd be better than nothing if someone dubbed over my lessons.
It needs to be properly, Yeah.
It's got to be native, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not that simple. Yeah. You kind of need someone to reteach the
Some
content.
things don't translate directly anyway. So you'd need a native speaker to make it understandable in a lot of cases. Like, what did they say? All right, slight tangent, but I was sending like a laptop the other day on Facebook, and a Brazilian couple came over to buy it, and I think that what they were trying to say was,
does this buy the laptop?
I mean, definitely, maybe there's a lot of cocaine. But anyway, they're like, oh, is this what did they say? Does this laptop have an Apple skin? And basically what they meant to say was, is it a Retina display? And I think there's a lot of examples of of stuff that does not direct translate
Right.
in After Effects or anything, because it's such a technical language.
Yeah,
It has to be a native speaker. It's my really weird roundabout way to get to.
So here's an example of that. So for the Freelance Manifesto, in that book, I have dozens of these sort of email templates, right? So it's like, here's when you email someone for the first time, here's 3 ways to do it. When you email them second time, here's 3 ways. And one of our teaching assistants at the time, his name's Daniel, and he lives in Germany. And I don't know German. I've never learned it. And but German, like I know a little bit of French, it has this concept of formal and informal, right? And so like English doesn't really have that. When I say you, that's the only word I use. There's not vous and tu, right? For French. So he was asking me like, so in German, when I email somebody, the way you've written these things, because this is just the way I am, I'm very casual. He's like, it doesn't really match if I use the formal, tense or whatever. But if I use the informal tense, that's kind of a faux pas. So what do you think I should do? I'm like, I wouldn't even think of that. And so that's just an example of like, if I'm trying to teach, I can teach animation to people who speak German, right? But I think if someone doesn't speak English and they're struggling to like, follow that, and someone just dubs over what I'm saying in German, it's not going to sound right either. And it's not going to be, and there's like, all of the lessons I do are filled with jokes and puns and things that, there's a lesson where we're talking about overlapping action. And I created this little Jack-in-the-Box looking thing with a Dallas Cowboys foam finger, which is an NFL team, right? From Texas.
Yeah.
Does anyone outside of the US know about the Dallas Cowboys? I'm sure like, in most of Europe, you probably do, but like if you're from Peru or something, like, are you following the Dallas Cowboys?
Yeah, we used to know, at least I used to know when I was in Brazil. Yeah.
We know that it's not rugby.
Yeah, it's they're way prissier than rugby players, I'll tell you that much. But but the thing is like, so if you have and I think I saw Saul. Oh yeah, Saul is one of our alumni. And he's from Saul, you're from Peru, right? He'll answer in the thing. That's why I used Peru. But like, if Saul made a class, then there would be all of these like idioms and this like, connection to the people that are taking the class that will make that knowledge stick better, right? Like Absolutely. He can explain a ball bounce the exact same way I did, but if he uses some really cool Peruvian slang that makes you laugh while that knowledge goes in, it'll stick, versus just making the Dallas Cowboys joke in Spanish, right? that's not gonna work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. Yeah, I think because even some of the guys being comment here, there is like a school in Brazil called Unhides. They put subtitles. I know Domestica. Domestica in Spain does as well. My wife did a course there, but I think when it's more like a technical course, if you're teaching like After Effects, the tools. Mm-hmm. I think subtitles go because you stop and you're looking, but when you like in animation or design, when you need to have the characters explain, you want the class to be fun, not just like, oh, here's the tools and move. So it's a lot more hard than just have. It
needs to be more engaging, doesn't it?
Yeah, it needs to be more engaged. I think
that's you two ever on Cineversity? Did you ever get on that website?
Yeah, I've been there before.
So like in the olden days, Cineversity had this series of videos, and people who've been around a while, they'll remember Dr. Sassy's Tooltips. You know what I'm talking about? So they had this series of videos, and it was literally like the lasso tool, the scale tool, the edge loop tool. Every tool had its own video, and it was this guy, and he literally just. It was like he was reading out of a dictionary. It was like so dry. It was so dry, it was almost entertaining. And he was brilliant, and he knew what he was talking about. He taught you the tool, but it was like, this is another Dr. Sassy's tooltip, and today we'll be talking about the edge loop. Now the way, and it's literally, that's it. Now, I was so into Cinema 4D, I could sit through that and learn from it. I think most people, though, it's like you're gonna lose. I mean, Tiago, right? Because you've taught, like, if you teach in person, almost every class I ever taught, there was like 10% of people who are super glued to every word you say, and they are going to absorb all of it. And then the bottom 10%, no matter, you could be juggling and, you could have a hat that's on fire.
I'm on fire.
And they're not going to pay attention at all. And then it's that middle 80% that you have to work to get to
Yeah.
keep their attention. You have to earn it, keep it, and then it's this juggle of like dun, 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 keyframes and F9 easies, and then do another little dance, and then talk about like so it's things like that. That like you I don't know, you just have to kind of like get the hang of that dance. And so I think that the Dr. Sassy's thing didn't do that, and so I think it was kind of a miss on that level. But I don't know, I think if we can get, I think Tiago's he's got a school motion franchise in his future. I think that's
actually, what you're saying is kind of like a good, almost like a metaphor for how it is to hire people, because when you look at the show reel, you get people who are amazing technically but don't know the artistry. And I think that's kind of that's a difficulty with our industry, because it's such a crossroads of a lot of different avenues, great artists, great designers, and great technical folk. But like you were saying earlier, in terms of teachers, it's rare to find that all in one package.
I think you probably can get few different people with different skills and put them together. But it is hard work, and I can see your point, having that feeling when people can express themselves on that language, so they can keep the quality in the same the class in the same quality you guys do in English. It's a lot more hard to find that person.
I think we
I think about like there used to be, like in the Flash cartoon days, there was this, even before anyone used the word meme, there was this meme,
like jib jab,
like in the jib jab days, and there was actually like this famous animation called All Your Base, and there was this thing of taking finding games that were written in English but then translated, or no, they were written in Japanese or Chinese but then translated into English by people who don't speak English, right? And it's like I worry that that's what you get if I'm imagining like it's kind of bums me out, because I know that there has to be some absolutely world-class, insane, mind-blowing talent just coming up every single day in China, right? There's like a couple billion people there. They have an amazing culture and a history of art. I cannot fathom the motion design that's being done there. But there's a huge language barrier, right? And not just a language barrier, it's like the way that language works is different. So if you took a Chinese tutorial and then you wrote out approximately what the English words are, and then I read it and you put my voice on it, I think it would just be horrible.
I mean, I have to admit, like,
could it be a comedy show? No,
I mean, it could be a meme. It could be a
China's got a lot of amazing technical ability, and you have a lot of great creative cities. Like Shanghai's got an amazing creative hub. Beijing's got an amazing creative hub. However, creativity at the moment in China, and if someone's Chinese watching, correct me if I'm wrong, creativity is not respected in China, and I think that's the difference in the West and the East at the moment. Like if you watch any TV, it's just as a basic level. If you watch TV in the West, like adverts or whatever, it's got a relative quality to it. You can hate what they're selling, but it's got a relative standard to it. Whereas in China, it's presets and whatever, and people aren't willing to pay for the creativity in general. There's when you get like big agencies like BBH in Shanghai, Beijing, or whatever, they'll generally, and this is a generalization, they'll commission people in the West to make stuff for China, because I'm not quite sure why, because there's a lot of creativity in China, but it's not given a chance. And
they just pop.
It's only a matter of time before it is, because Shanghai is an amazing creative city, Beijing's an amazing city, creative city, Guangzhou is an amazing creative city, Shenzhen's an amazing creative city, Hangzhou or whatever. There's loads of amazing creative cities, but they're not respected yet, or creatives aren't respected yet in China.
Right. That's interesting. So it's more like on the business side, they haven't learned to value
absolutely
having your brand. Yeah, and I think that's honestly one of the reasons I'm guessing that like Buck opened Buck Sydney, because it's much easier access to the Asian market if you're in Australia, because I know a lot of that work goes to Australia too.
But I suspect Thiago's probably experienced some of this in Brazil as well. I don't think creative is as respected as it should be in Brazil in terms of paying for a good creative.
Nah, yeah, but I think we're still far behind how is in Europe. Even not just to talk about salary, just talking about budget, and how agents and creatives treat, it's basically come, simple situation is coming with like amazing reference from Buck and say, oh, we have 2 weeks, we have 10 grand to do that. We say, hey, just call Buck and ask them to do that. And see, they tell you to fuck off,
Right.
But
I gotta pick up the phone.
and that's what a lot of agencies believe. It's always it's quite hard.
I thought we probably just start wrapping up.
Yeah,
soon,
we're hitting 2 hours and 13 minutes. This has been the longest.
This is like the Joe Rogan podcast here. I like it.
It is. This is definitely the Tarantino-esque podcast.
Well, here I'll eat the cherry then. Go ahead.
I do have a quick question that kind of links back to what you were saying earlier about university. Like, if knowing what you know now, would you redo your university experience, even though you'd incur like a massive amount of debt kind of thing? Would you redo that experience knowing what you know now? Or would you forego it?
I've thought about this too. So I went to college in 1999. That's when I graduated high school and went. And at the time, there was no other option, right? Like when I went to school, here's what I knew. I didn't want to live in Texas anymore. I wanted to leave and go somewhere else, as different as it could be. And Boston is that. I was always like the video guy and wanted to like, make videos and learn to edit and stuff like that. And BU had a film and television program. And so it just kind of checked all these boxes for me. And I'm very lucky, and I've talked about this. My father was a surgeon before he retired. So I didn't have student loans. Like I was able to get scholarships, but also, I mean, it still probably cost $50,000 for me to go to BU.
Yeah.
And that was, I worked, during it too. But I was helped a lot by my parents. So at the time, like if I had to go back in time, I'm not sure what I would do, because there wasn't any way, there was no path for an 18-year-old to get an internship, like there was no model for that. And there wasn't any way to find like-minded people easily. Like if I wanted to move to any city now and find people who are into heavy metal music, it'd be so easy, right? If I want to find
the Discord for that.
Yeah. If I want to, if I ever move, I don't know, let's say I move to London, but I want to find, all the Dallas Cowboys fans. Not hard at all, right?
It's about 5.
Right. There's a lot more, Arsenal fans in Fort Worth than there are. So anyway, so when I was in college, I don't know how else I would have had that experience. And that experience, not even, I mean, honestly, I don't even really remember the learning part. It was the living part.
Yeah.
That experience, I don't know how else I would have gotten it. Now I can think of 50 ways that I could get that, right? And that my kids can get that. And so I think it's also a different mindset that I have than my parents had. My parents' generation, so I'm turning 40 in April. So like, my generation, our parents were basically like, it wasn't even a question. You were going to college, like everybody, whether they should have gone to college or not. Right.
Yep. Whenever you say my generation, I've got Mick Jagger singing in my head.
That's good. That's actually good. It's better than the Limp Bizkit, my generation, I guess.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. But I don't think it's that way anymore. Like I have a lot of friends that, they think like my wife and I, and they're like, they're doing the math and they're like, what's the educational value of, instead of having, Layla, who, one day she'll turn 18 and she could take out a loan for, at that time, who knows, it could be $100K a year, for 1 year. Or what if we take the money we're socking away for her and we give her 10 grand and we send her to Europe for 6 months and say, find a job, just go live by yourself and make some friends and find a job, and then come back and then live with us for a year while you intern somewhere. And, there's just, there's all these creative ways that you can sort of cobble together that same experience of fish out of water, meeting new people, living on your own, having to do your own laundry and, cook your own meals and do your dishes and all of that stuff, making it all work, figuring out what you like to do when you don't have a day that is literally like every 15 minutes scheduled for you, the way school normally is when you're, growing up. Figuring out what you think you want your life to look like. And then there's a million ways of learning that. If you want to, if you want to cook, if you want to learn to be a chef, you can go learn that, right? And you don't have to pay $80,000 a year to learn that either, right? If you want to learn motion design, if you want to learn computer program, if you want to be a truck driver, it doesn't matter. You don't need to spend the kind of money that you now typically are spending to figure out what you want to do, which unfortunately, I think that's the thing I think a lot of people don't really realize, is that college is also where, it's not that college is where you figure out what you want to do. It's that 18 to 22 is where you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah.
Right.
That's your main kind of growing period as a personality, isn't it, really?
Yeah. And so what if the convention was when you turn 18, it's interesting. My parents have a house. They still live in Texas half the year, but they also live in Israel.
Wow.
This is another long story, but one of my college roommates, one of my best friends, he joined the Israeli army as soon as he graduated college. And he said, it's really interesting because there you turn 18, almost everybody does a year in the military. Right. And
Scandinavian countries do the same thing.
Yeah. A lot of people do that. And, it's like, you learn a lot, being in a military situation. I mean, and, the vast majority are not shooting guns and fighting people, obviously, but they're fixing tanks, or they're, translating Arabic or whatever they're doing. And, that experience to just have that 1 year of that, where it's like, oh my God, all of a sudden you're not at home and there are expectations and you get yelled at and you can lose your job and you can be, court-martialed and all kinds of things.
It's the real world.
And then, okay, now that you've had that experience, does it make sense? And you've been paid, right? Does it make sense to take out a loan, right? Yeah. I think that concept
is really important because especially my generation is similar to you, 99, when I joined university in Brazil, it's like your parents put the pressure, you need to go to university, and it's basically finish high school, you need to go to university.
There wasn't an option back then, though. That was like the path.
Yeah, the path, but in the same time, you get a little bit in Europe where you guys have a break. It's kind of
sometimes. I never had a break.
Yeah, but
I wish I had a break. I'd love that. You meant some people have like a year break.
A gap,
gap year. I never had that.
But I think it's important, like Joy's saying, I think maturity enough to understand it, because I had a lot of friends that, in my time, they used to do a course called tourism. So they learn about, travel agency. And but they used to do that because it was the easiest course to get in, and because the parents put pressure and they didn't know what to do. And after 1 or 2 years, they just drop university and decide.
So you're paying all that money for something that's useless.
Yeah, they do, but it's just because in the end it's the parents paying. In Brazil.
What we should do is ironically learn from like the Amish. Go back to the 1800s and have
Rumspringa.
Rumspringa. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
That's what we need. Just that year out, do what you want, figure out what you want, and then
I love the
carry
idea.
on.
Yeah.
It terrifies me because I have a son and I know what he would do. Yeah, I think
at the same time it might terrify you.
That's a good idea.
It might terrify you, but that's going to make him a much better person, whatever he gets up to. And sometimes ignorance is bliss.
You're right. I mean, that I certainly did stupid things in college that
exactly.
I'm glad no one knows what. But yeah, I mean, I think
I'm glad we didn't have fucking smartphones back then. That's for sure.
I'm also if someone looks at like my career too, that I think it's basically luck that I ended up sort of in the field that my diploma says, film and television, like, you know, like what I learned at BU was not what I did. I was an editor before, and they had like Steenbeck machines and a couple of Avids that you could use if you got time on them. And I bought Final Cut Pro so I could use it in my dorm room. And that's how I learned to do it, right? But I think that like most of my friends in the same program as me, I'd say 70% of them are not in this field at all. Not even close, right? So like, what was the value of their time there, right? It was just the hanging out and making the friends and maybe some connections, you know. And I just think there's a different way to do that now. I think that like, if I want my kid to go spend 4 years living in Boston, and you know, I don't care what she does for the first year. I want you to get the hang of getting up with an alarm clock every day. How about that?
You could
that would be a success, right?
You could enroll them into School of Motion and then claw back some of the money you spent on the kids.
Exactly.
There you go.
I like that. Yeah, they'll spend their allowance on School of Motion classes. Yeah. So there's some version of that I think is in our future of, you know, like get this idea of college, like get that out of your head. Pretend college doesn't exist. There's no such thing as college. It's never existed ever. But now you have this crazy idea. I have an 18-year-old and I've got, I don't know, I'm willing to kind of help them with some bills for a couple more years. After that, they're on their own. And in the meantime, I want them to like learn some personal responsibility. I want them to figure out what they want to do with their life, what's going to make them happy, what are they good at, where could they point their brains and turn that into a career. I have 2 years, you know, worth of, I don't know, I can throw 10K at it or something, you know. How would there's a solution to that, right? And the solution is not, I got an idea, let's build this really expensive campus and let's have an endowment and let's have 50,000 students come every year or 10,000 students and let's charge all this money and let's have faculty with tenure that we can't fire and let's have a football team. And I mean, no one would come up with that idea, right? If it didn't already exist. I think you'd come up with something much leaner. So I think that's the solution.
Yeah, I agree.
Cool.
All right, should we? I think that's a good point to finish on too.
Yeah,
you don't spend the money unless you have to spend the money.
And take a break
on your kids. That is.
Yeah, and make sure the money goes into something like I think that will actually improve them or help or give them a new perspective. And I don't know. I think a lot of the money you pay for, you know, you go to Harvard or something. It's a stamp. It's the credential. That's what you're buying.
It is.
You know, you're buying the signal that you were accepted into Harvard. Basically, the second you're accepted into Harvard, you're done. It doesn't actually matter what you learn there. All you need is to survive for 4 years, get the diploma, and leave.
It's like an old boys club, isn't it? It's like, oh, okay, you can afford to go here. Okay, you're one of us. And that's that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful campus, I will say that. But
it is.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, if you've got that amount of money, of course it's going to be a beautiful campus.
Yeah. They're endowed. I think they have the largest endowment of any, I know it's of any school, but I think actually of anything in the world, like any like entity, they have billions and billions of dollars.
It's pretty crazy. And it's just the amount of like tech entrepreneurs that just donate millions per year. It's ridiculous. But anyway, that's a different podcast, I suspect.
Exactly. That's next time. Well, thank you guys for this. This was awesome.
Cool.
This was really fun.
Well,
thanks for joining
really
us.
Good. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Share a lot of your knowledge on education as well.
Yeah, it's been really good. And it's just nice to get the whole educational side of things as well as the studio side of things too. It's nice to have like a much rounder perspective.
Yeah, I learned a lot from you too, and I'm hoping that like we can just keep in touch and sort of figure out how can School of Motion help studios and artists and help connect our students with these opportunities, you know. So yeah, this was a lot of fun, and thanks to everyone on YouTube for the questions and everything.
Cool, man.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joy. Thank you everyone for watching, and if you miss anything, the video is gonna be online. It's longer than a feature film. So make sure you get the weekend off, you know, to watch.
So our next show is going to be on the 20th, isn't it? 20th of October.
Yeah, 20th of
with,
October.
that's Cavalry.
Yeah, it's the guys from Cavalry. Yeah.
Yes, that should be super. Again, we're kind of like trying to broaden our horizons a little bit. So we've got education and then software development as well. I think it's quite an interesting topic to cover. That's why we're excited about Cavalry in a couple of weeks' time.
And promote them because Adobe never sponsor us, you know. So
okay,
yeah,
so
hey Adobe,
cover your mouth when you say
cool.
Get demonetized.
Right.
Yeah, so thank you so much, Joey. Thank you, guys. We're gonna see you guys in 2 weeks' time. On a Tuesday,
Take care.
same
Look
time.
after each other.
Yeah, take care.
Awesome.
Thanks. Bye.
Everyone.
Bye. Let me stop.